Hey guys, welcome to another show. What? Okay. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and all that kind of stuff. Um, this is mostly just a little Arsenal therapy session. I know we haven't spoken in a while, haven't done the last couple of match reactions, going through some shit. I know people are like, it's because of the results, but it's not really because of the results. I mean, I've been there for I've been doing this for like 4 years, and we've had a myriad of bad results. So it's not really about the results or whatever. It's just like some more personal reasons why I haven't been on, but I'm trying to get back on the horse. So forgive me for not being here. Um, I also haven't been on Twitter either, just because um, yeah, I'm like, listen, I the amount of and here's the thing, it's like I feel like we can talk freely and be honest about what's going on with Arsenal without doing whatever's going on that app. So I haven't been on there either, just to like protect my mental, because we're hanging on by a thread. But yeah, it's really difficult to watch Arsenal's games. It's been, I feel like, tough all season. I think, like, I don't like to be one of those types of people that are like, it's not even like an I told you so type of thing. It's just like from the beginning of the season, we haven't felt right. And it's not just since we've lost players, it's like the whole time, So it's watching us play is like a chore, I really was like back and forth about watching the Nottingham Forest game. And I'm like, it's not even so much that we're losing games, it's more just we don't play. Like we're just very under the surface, like bare, like there's no energy, no zip, no life, no nothing. The team is just like dead. And I know that could be for a plethora of reasons, lack of fitness, in and out of injuries, and just not being up for the fight. So all of those things are really difficult to watch, especially with a team that last couple of seasons, I think a lot of us felt like could be special. So them losing their sparkle was really difficult to see. And we did get a draw against Nottingham Forest, but it's kind of like, okay, so how many games do we have left? Because every 90 minutes feels like the longest 90 minutes of my life. We could have played for 2 more 90 minutes and we wouldn't have scored. We just don't have anything going in the final third. And, this is kind of like an open forum. You guys can put things like in the comments and we can just chat, but I don't really have like a set thing that I really want to talk about. I just feel like, um, yeah, where do we go from here? Who's really to blame? I see people feeling sorry for Mikel. He's been let down by the board. I see people blaming Mikel. It's all his fault, and it's really hard for me to come to a definitive conclusion of who is 100% to blame, because I don't think there's any one person that's to blame. I think everybody has a part to play. The players, the manager, the everybody that's in charge of transfers, and the owners. Everybody has a part to play. But I think when we talk about where do we go from here, we have to use common sense. And common sense is that, what is the likelihood of us getting the Cronkies out? Very unlikely. What's the likelihood of us changing out the entire team? Unlikely. What's the likelihood of Mikel leaving? I don't know. Unless he says he's not up for it anymore, then we're stuck with him. So everything is going to stay as it is. So I do think that also breeds like that little bit of apathy, because seeing Chelsea fans in the position that they're in right now, which is well within striking distance of the top 4, and knowing that they're going to continue to spend money as a club, seeing them protest their owners while Arsenal fans are, basically just feel like they're trapped. It's a little disheartening, and I feel like that's where the apathy sets in. And I'm starting to feel the apathy of like it won't change. And I'm just, the only I don't know where we go from here. I really don't. I'm asking y'all, what do we do? Because the season is over. People that are pretending, like people have been pretending for months that we're still in the title race. We haven't been in the title race at all, to be honest. We've just been close enough for the media to still pretend, but all it was gonna take was a couple of bad results to put us, what are we, like, 17 points behind them, 12 points behind them, some nonsense like that. We're pretty far behind them. I know it's double digits we're behind them, so, and even if we had won our last 2 games, it would be, like, 7 points behind them, so we're really far behind them. We're closer to 10th than we are to 1st, and it just feels very, like, ominous, it really does, because we know nobody. I think we need big changes up front, like in terms of not just up front on the team, but like management and above. Like those people lack any sort of competitive edge. They're not, ambitious enough. And so I wonder, I really wonder where we go from here. Is it just as simple as, get Arteta the striker that he needs and it'll all be good? Or is it going to take much more than that? Because I don't think it's as simple as just getting the attackers. Arteta had Aubameyang and couldn't get him scoring. So I don't know if I feel like it's just, yeah, just get an attacker and it'll be fine. It could help, but fundamentally, the way that we play football is just, I know this is going to sound super cringe, but it's not the Arsenal way. We don't impose ourselves on other teams. We don't attack, really. We're not aggressive. We don't back ourselves. We don't have the type of attitude where it's like, well, if you score, it doesn't matter because we're going to score two or three. It's giving very much like we're so scared to give up a goal that we're so rigid. And it's just not the Arsenal way. The Arsenal way is not this. It's so rare that you see Arsenal teams play like this. I don't think we ever have. And so we're maybe in the past we've gone too far to the other direction where we're basically like super open. We've gone way the other direction. The guys they need a 2-week clinic with Arsene to relearn how to attack. How to attack. How do you get into the final third and score goals freely and like frequently? They are so confused. And when Calafiori came off against Nottingham Forest, all of the attacking impetus went out of that team. And it's not even like, it's like nobody would ever blame Ethan, but Ethan was triple team. There was 3 players on him. I don't think they felt like they had Mark Marino. It's just wild, so getting to the point where you're playing Tierney at left wing or, playing Marino up front, there has to be an inquest. There has to be an inquest on how we got here, so that's why I'm chit-chatting with y'all. I do feel like that I don't think I felt this apathetic since late Arsene. And that's saying a lot because late Arsene, I checked scores, and if we won, I rewatched it, maybe. And if we lost, I said, thank God I didn't lose that 90 minutes. And I'm getting close to that because I just cannot watch this team play. They're so hard to fucking watch, and I love them, but they are so hard to watch. They're so hard to watch. I used to rewatch every game multiple times, because there's so much to pick apart, whether we won or lost. Now you couldn't pay me to rewatch one of our games. Like that's basically like the death penalty because it's so bad. I know I'm being so dramatic, but you guys know that's what I'm about. So yeah, it's just tough. Aha says, do you know what this reminds me of? Just late 2020 Arsenal. It does. It's just we used to have I remember I used to listen to Arsenal Vision all the time. Now that I create a lot of content, I don't have as much time to listen. But when I had more time to listen, I used to listen to Arsenal Vision, and they would talk about like especially Elliot, because Elliot is a child of Wenger, and it very much so came in during the Emirates era. So all he knew was attacking midfielders and attacking talent, and that was it. And he spoke about like a lot about how we couldn't score goals and how the attack looked strange and how we just never looked like we're going to score goals. And that we've went away from that, but I feel like we've only had one season where we didn't talk about the attack at all. In 2022, 2023 under Mikel, we never spoke about the attack. We may have spoken about giving up goals, but and individual errors that led to goals, but we never spoke about whether or not we were going to score. We went to Anfield and scored 2 goals in like 20 minutes. There was never a conversation about whether or not we were going to score goals. The conversation was always whether or not we would keep enough out. And I think that's where the DM came in and wanting different defenders and stuff like that. But outside of that season, I don't remember any time where we didn't talk about these weird games where it never looked like we were going to score. And I think there has to be some emphasis or at least a light shine on Mikel as an attacking coach, because how many times are we going to watch a game and feel like we're not going to score a goal? And during like 2020, 2021, beginning of Arteta, all the way up until when we bought Jesus, basically, I had huge questions on whether or not we'd ever score enough goals because it just never looked like we were going to score. And we always said, oh, we'll just get new attackers. And then not only have we not gotten the attackers, but we're still having some of the same issues, and I'm like, hello, like when are we going to play good, fluid football? And it's not just about entertainment. It's about the best teams are inevitable in the box. They're inevitable and scoring. Whether it looks great or not it doesn't really matter. But the best teams in the world are inevitable in the final third, and we are not inevitable in the final third. So I'm not quite sure how we think we're going to win shit if we're don't have a system that creates chances at a high volume and creates high quality chances for attackers, or like we don't have the clinical finishers that can just eat even though they're not being offered a lot. Nico says, just how bad is it that you called this shit in the summer and it still feels terrible watching it happen? I just don't even think it was that hard. It was that tough to see, like in the summer. It's not like I had like a crystal ball and I was the only one who could see. A lot of us were like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that the summer went by." And often when you complain about things, you get called like every name under the book. And I get it. It's like nobody wants to hear the negative shit, right? But after 2 failed title races, the window that we had was totally unacceptable. There was not a single thing about that window that was okay, and that's separate from whether or not I like the players or not. You know, I don't have an agenda against Calafiori. Calafiori is a fine player. Like, he's a good player, good young player that hopefully eventually Mikel will just move to center back and we'll just move on, right? Good player. You know, Marino is like a decent squad piece, but coming out of 2 failed title races, you need something that's gonna boost you, especially up front. That is the one position, the one part of the pitch that we have completely neglected, and it looks like it. It looks like it's a falling down building. You look at the back, you know, the defenders, and it's like a nice, beautiful hotel. The front is a shabby motel. You know, it really is, and that's not to shade the players, but there's such a quality gap from the back to the front, you know, and it's showing, you know, but there's a lot of people that were saying like, "Oh yeah, well, um, we did what we needed to do. We got an attacker, you know, we got a defender. We needed that. We need." No, that's not the summer that we felt like we needed. Be real. Like, that summer was terrible. It was so anticlimactic. And then to double down on it in January was like, how can I even watch this shit? You know, it's like I'm finding it. Are you guys not finding it difficult to watch? I am struggling. I'm struggling. Like, watching us feels like oh my gosh, watching us is so hard. I don't know if you guys are struggling, but it was like the Nottingham Forest game was the first time in a long, long time that I was like, I really could just not turn this shit on. You know? World Boss, thank you so much for your super chat. I really do appreciate it. You're saying, just here to remind you that you rock, Jess. Keep up the great work you are doing, even when times are tough. Coffee on me today. Thank you so much. Come on, you Gunners. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And the issues are not like life threatening. It's just with work, being a freelancer, it's really, really stressful. And so, yeah, I was just talking to a friend about it, and this is like a sidebar. We'll get back to Arsenal, but a lot of times as a freelancer, you do feel like fight or flight. You know, you're constantly trying to find the next thing that you're going to do. And, you know, if one job ends, you have to try to get something else. And so I've been really trying to like figure out what things are going to look like in the next couple of months. And so it's kind of taken me under. Doesn't help that my team is not playing well either. So I apologize, you know. Chris says, and thank you so much for your super chat. Chris says it's a real chore to watch, predictable and boring. Anton Dunn says, who do you want as the DOF as that is integral to building a great team for next season? Me and Diluted spoke about this quite a bit on his show earlier, but I just am fully against anybody that's an internal hire. So Jason Ito, I'm sorry, I don't know you, but I'm fully against you as the main guy. It just will never happen for me. I'll never back it unless he shows something completely different. It's the wrong decision. It's the wrong way to go. I like the names that I can see what they've done on paper. You know, I think that that's maybe because I don't know Jason Ito, so I don't know what he's doing or what he's telling them. But I prefer somebody that has experience building successful sides, and whether it's successful in terms of like a Brighton successful, which we would say that that's a successful team based on what the conditions are around what the expectations are of Brighton. The Newcastle rebuild, that's a success, you know, in terms of being able to build that team quickly. Newcastle have gotten to the place that we're at in a much shorter period of time. Uh, Berta, that's at Atletico Madrid, would be really high on my list because not only can he deal with a difficult and hard character like Simeone, but they're able to compete somewhat with two juggernauts in Barcelona and Real Madrid, and they're never really under threat. You know, the rebuild, or like the players that they brought in this last window, have pushed them forward, you know, quite a bit, and bringing in Julian Alvarez and Gallagher and Sorloth and guys like that. I would take him, and I would take Olabe. You know, I like him in terms of, like, I've seen him build a successful side. Real Sociedad have fallen away just a little bit, but that's because they've lost key players. But I'm a little bit, you know, just wanting it to get done so we can know what direction we're going in. But I would prefer it to be somebody where I can see tangible evidence of a successful squad being built. Um, the fact that they're not even interested in Luis Campos in any way, shape, or form is very, like, typical Arsenal. If the best option is available to us, we don't take it. When Klopp was on offer, we didn't take it. When Ancelotti was on offer, we didn't take it. Luis Campos is on the offer, we didn't take it. You know, it's very Arsenal to say, no, 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 don't get the best thing. Let's find something and try to make it, you know, just yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would take any one of those three, but basically not Jason Ito. You know, Johnny says, I didn't watch more than 10 minutes at Forest either. Partially to blame is also the West Ham result. It has really impacted the team and not in a positive way. The West Ham game was a travesty. It was just how we can't beat this team at home. And it was just like the simple script of, what I don't understand is how we've gotten to a place where, as a fan base, we have accepted that losing the ball, the consequence for losing a ball in the opposition's third, is the opposition getting into our box within 2 seconds. And so the fallout of that is that anytime we lose the ball, people are super upset because they're like, "Yeah, but that's because we're gonna give up a dangerous opportunity." Do you guys not watch football? I watch Liverpool and other teams, their attackers lose the ball all the time. The difference between them and us is that they have players in midfield that stop those counterattacks from happening. It's rare that you see players dribble all the way from their box to our box without anyone stopping them. What do you think the repercussions of that is? If you have a team that every time they lose the ball, it becomes a dangerous opportunity for the other team, what do you think that team is going to do? They're going to white knuckle the ball so that and pass safely and not be confident in the things that they're doing, because they know if they give up the ball, that could be it. But we've normalized it as a fan base. We have normalized, if we lose the ball, like, because that's what happens when you are attacking and you have the ball a lot. 9 times out of 10, whatever you're trying to do is not going to come off. The cross isn't going to be good enough. The pass across is not going to be good enough. You're going to try to pass between the lines and it's going to get cut out. But what we've normalized is that, well, if you do that, then 1-2 passes and they're in our box. So don't lose the ball. Hello? Like, how have we gotten here? I don't get it. But that's how this team plays. This team plays like it is deathly afraid to lose the ball. And I think the manager is afraid to lose the ball because I feel like he is scorned and scarred from what happened in that first season, where there were a lot of times where we lost the ball in dangerous positions or while we were attacking. And they did get into our final third, and Gabriel and Saliba and Ramsdale were left to their own devices. And I think the way that he shifted is keep the ball, don't pass between the lines, don't access central spaces, because we did all those things in the first year. So I'm not trying to hear that shit. I'm not trying to hear we can't access central spaces, we can't pass between the lines, we can't attack, we can't pass faster, we can't do 1 or 2 touch. We've seen this team do that. So it's not that we can't, it's that we don't. And I feel like the reason why we do that is because when we lose the ball, it becomes a dangerous opportunity, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. We should not give away the ball and they end up scoring every single time. It just shouldn't be that. Our defenders do not save us enough in those situations. I feel like they back up and back up and back up and don't engage, and then they do like a half-hearted, like what Calafiori did, and then they just get into the box. It's just weird to me how we've normalized that. If attackers can't feel like they can make a mistake, then they're going to hold onto the ball and recycle. Do you guys watch Real Madrid? Do you know how many times Vinny Jr. loses a fucking ball? Vinny Jr. loses the ball like 9 times out of 10. But the one time that he doesn't lose it, he cooks, and then he kicks in the back of the net, and it all is forgiven. I went to the place around the corner and watched that Aston Villa Liverpool game. Do you know how many times Salah lost the ball? Those guys then and Curtis Jones and all them. If we're saying that we can't lose the fucking ball, because that means that it's going to make sense that the other team just runs through our team. And actually, they don't even run through our team because nobody's even there, and gets into our final third and crosses it across, and then they score. Then I don't know. I don't know. Like, I really don't. The timidness and the lack of confidence in the final third comes from the manager. It comes from some sort of instruction to pass slow, because when you pass slow, you're in more control, and to hold on to the ball and not try to exit central spaces, because he probably has some sort of data that lets him know that when you lose the ball in this area, you're most likely to concede. And those areas tend to be down the center. So if we can't attack down the center, then he wants to make sure that the other team doesn't attack down the center. It's fucking crazy. Watching us against West Ham was like seeing another movie. I was talking to Laura, and that game was going on, and she was like, where is the pace and where's the pace and the quick passing? And I was like, this is the same thing we've been watching. And I was like, all it's going to take is one chance and they're going to score, after we've been diddling around for like 30 minutes. And she said, Jared Bowen. And that's exactly what happened. Tired of that shit. It's like, I would just want to see us at least attempt, because I think when you're in the mode of scoring, you score more anyway. And even if you do concede, if you always feel like you can score, then you're in a better position to recover from those bad moments that are inevitable. You're never going to keep a clean sheet all the time, but we just don't ever look like we're confident that we're going to score. And that's hard to watch, because that's not the Arsenal I know. One thing I know about Arsenal is we could score goals. Boy says, I think it's late to be calling Salah a mediocre footballer, bro. He's winning the league while cutting us off in the process, or cutting us off, I think you mean. Andrew says, I've lost count of the amount of times Odegaard has lost the ball in the middle of the park, which has led to a goal, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't. And the time that he lost it against West Ham, it wasn't in the middle of the pitch. It was in the opposition's half by the box. Do you see what I'm saying? Anytime that we lose the ball, it should not. I get the Brighton one. The Brighton one was closer, so I could maybe say more of that one. But that one against West Ham, that wasn't near our box. That wasn't even at halfway. That was in their opposition half. We've gotten to the point where if you lose the ball, instead of asking the question why we lose a ball, and that means the other team gets a dangerous opportunity, we're saying don't lose the ball. And if you get to a point where you're like hamstringing the ball, like, oh no, we can't lose it, you're never going to play fluid and exciting football. You're never going to pass the ball 100% at 100%. What do we always say? When somebody has a really good passing accuracy, a lot of times that's because they play it safe. It's not because they're playing people off the park and they're playing perfect passes. A lot of players that are really creative have like 60% pass completion. And that's the problem that we have. We don't have the contingency plan to be more creative, because we're just holding on to the ball for dear life. And this is not to shit on Thomas or anything like that, but he's not the type of player that's going to stop those transitions. And our defenders don't engage up high. They just back up. So there's a lot going on in there. And I just feel like, yeah, if we're not allowed to give up the ball, which of course you don't want your players to give up the ball and you don't want to encourage just silly giving the ball away. But if a player is trying something and they're trying to pass the ball through the lines and it gets cut out, and then somehow in 2 passes we give up the goal, I'm not sure that I'm like, okay, well, you just shouldn't have lost the ball. I'm asking, why is it that they got into the box? Like, hello? It's crazy to me because if you watch other teams play, you see that attackers lose the ball quite a bit, especially the ones that are allowed to really attack. They don't get past their man every single time. The cross isn't accurate all the time, but they're encouraged to do it again and again and again because eventually it will come off. Our team isn't encouraged to do anything over and over again except for pass it sideways. You know, Belchick says that was supposed to be Rice. I mean, and that's where the questions around the positioning of Rice, that 8 position, and how that is really utilizing the best of his strengths. Because if he's in those positions, that's what he's meant to do. But when he's up high, and because if he's up high and because he could be in a completely different position, if he's up high and on the left, and all it's going to take is for a midfielder to come short and the fullback just pass it to a midfielder and they just turn and run off, Rice is not going to catch up to them. He's bypassed already. He's playing catch up. And so him being in this high position instead of in a double pivot next to Thomas is very concerning because not only is he not very good against low blocks, which we're coming up against a lot, mid and low blocks where you need players that can turn out of pressure and players that can play in small spaces. Not only does he not help us there, but he also can't do the things that he does really well, which is stopping counterattacks. So it's a double-edged sword there. And we don't have any cover. There's no cover for the back line, none. So if we lose the ball, we're in so much trouble. And if the other team doesn't fuck it up constantly, like Nottingham Forest was doing yesterday, we're in trouble, So I don't know why people aren't seeing that. Like, and I'm not even trying to say like there's no fault in players giving away the ball, but you're going to give up the ball. Like, so you need to have somebody that can stop counterattacks. Neil says we're hardwired the wrong way. Kwame says Salah is winning his second Premier League title this season. I don't know who's talking about Salah as an average player. Amina says, I don't understand why Arteta is so obsessed with playing defensive football against lower teams. He sets up like we're playing top 6 teams, and when we're playing top 6 teams, Rice works in the 8 because there's a lot more space because those teams attack us. They don't sit back in their box. But when we play against not so great teams or teams that are okay to sit and counterattack, when the space is condensed, he's so much less like effective. And that's not on him. When you buy somebody whose main attribute is being able to stop counterattacks and win the ball back for you, when you put him in a position like that, you're setting them up for failure because you also leave Thomas Partey on an island by himself or Jorginho on an island by himself. And I just don't understand why Arteta continuously does that because surely you know that those 2 players are not stopping counterattacks. You know this, so having Declan so high doesn't make sense from an attacking standpoint against most teams. And also to me, doesn't make any sense defensively to help us because that's his bag is to be deeper. So it's weird, but we set up the same against everyone and we set up in a defensive way, like you said. And we don't take our game to the opposite team. It's like fake. It's like we're kind of taking our game to you because we're holding on to the ball. But it's all kind of like a facade, like this fake kind of control and this fake kind of like dominance because all it is possession to keep the other team from hitting us. That's all it is, Y'all are talking about Salah. We don't have to pretend like Salah is not like a world-class player. Let's be honest. Brian, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, what is it about Arsenal fans that love a great story? And I think that we have forever to win trophies. Players will leave if we don't shape up now. Yeah, I mean, I think we're a very Disney team. If I'm honest, I think as a fan base, and I think the club buys into it as well or plays into it because they like hiring people from within the club or hiring people that have a connection to the club because I think probably psychologically we're a lot less likely to turn on people that have a connection to the club. The reason why we turned on Emery so fast was because he was an Arsenal. Like Emery was not Arsenal. We didn't care. He ain't never been around. Like, he never played for us. Like, so we were like, you can skedaddle. But the reason why we were so in love with Arsene was because he did so much for us in the past. So we wanted to hold on. And the reason why I feel like people are so connected to Mikel is because he played for Arsenal. The reason why Edu got the job is most likely because he played for Arsenal. Per Mertesacker played for Arsenal. So I think they do that on purpose, because psychologically they know the fans are going to be a lot less harsh on people that have played for the club. But the fans are very Disney, about everything. And like this weird culty thing that they have with Mikel is weird because it's like, surely if this was anyone else, you'd want them out. Even if they, helped rebuild the side. Because the job is not to rebuild the team. That was a step to get to where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be winning trophies, and he's not doing that. So really, he is failing in what the remit of the job actually is. Especially after 5 seasons. If this was anyone else, you guys would be questioning. But he has this weird cult following that I'm not quite sure how he's gained. He wasn't an invincible. He wasn't even that good. Let's be honest. It's just like a very strange thing, and I think it's just people have wedded themselves to this idea that we're gonna win everything with him, and I'm not quite sure like where that's come from. I think it's the maybe more of the I don't know. I really don't know because he talks a good game, and I think he means well, but ultimately he can't get us over the line. And anytime we need to win, to do something, to take advantage, or to go ahead, or to win, we don't. And that has to come from the manager in some ways. He's had different teams every season, and the result has been the same. So I have to imagine that some of this has to be you, because you're the common denominator. Some of these players were not here when we lost to Olympiacos, in the round of 32 of the Europa League. So, but you were here. You were here when we lost to Villarreal. You were here, So he has to be there at some point. But he has like a weird cult following, and his cult following is so strong that people are even trying to convince themselves that Kai Havertz was a great signing. Having those conversations in back channels and stuff like that, and people are telling me that Kai Havertz is a good signing because he showed something, and he's good. And I'm like, he's not a good signing. He's an average footballer, and there's no reason why we need to pretend. But they have to protect it because it was one of Arteta's biggest mistakes. And that whole situation, to me, it was like the beginning of kind of the end of everything that's happening now. I stand on that. That signing alone is like an albatross around our neck. Even though I like the guy, it's an albatross around our neck. Jalen says, yeah, defo the connection. So the romanticism of an ex-player building the club and winning the league. Johnny says, Arteta winner, 1-0, 84th minute against City made me cheer, to be fair. I think why I had a hard time with Mikel as an Arsenal player is because he came in like the day after we lost 8-2 to United, and we bought a shit ton of players in that window, and he was one of them. And I just remember being like, what the fuck is Everton's average ass captain gonna do for us after we just got whooped 8-2 by Man United? So I always had a hard time like accepting him, even though he was all right. But I was like, he's not to our standards. Wayne Francis says, I just had to blaze up something in Now AFC post on Instagram. It's literally propaganda at this point. Yeah, all those accounts I don't know if they're paid or what, but they definitely do post like super positive stuff. I don't know. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Let me try to read some more of these comments out. Get your thoughts and feelings out there. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Amina says, why can't Arteta win domestic cups with this team? Why couldn't he win the Europa with this team that challenged first? Y'all tell me, because whether he plays a good team or a rotated side, we go out sad in the cups all the same. And to me, he can't get into the cups. Or I feel like because you don't have to be the best team to win a cup, it evens out the playing field, and so the mentality has to be on point. In the league, 9 times out of 10, the better team wins. And over a 38 game period, you end where you end. In a cup competition, you can get beat by Coventry, So I feel like with Arteta, he has a hard time tapping into the psyche of the players to make them feel confident enough to win a game where it's a do or die. And I think that's the biggest problem with Arsenal is if it's a game where you can't draw, meaning there's no option to share the points and you have to win or go home. Arteta can't get the team into a do or die mentality. If you've ever played sports at any sort of level, you will know that if there's a league phase and a cup in some way, the energy around a cup is different than the day to day of like a league. Day to day league, it's like repetition. It's like machine. Doon, 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 do the same thing every day, and you'll get pretty much the same result. In a cup, the energy is so high, and because it's a one-off game, it evens out the playing field a lot. And so we usually play up to the level of the team that we're playing up against. And when it comes down to having to win, we don't. And that comes from the manager because it also happens in games where in the league, these are the pivotal games that will put us in a good position to catch someone or put us into a good position to win the league or push ourselves further forward. We don't win those. And so I think when you also don't have personalities, because Arteta has also built the team in his image, which I think he likes players that are like him, that are kind of nice, happy to be there. Like when he was at Arsenal, he was a good player, happy to be there because it was like the best thing that was ever going to happen to him. A good technical player that followed the directions and followed what the manager wanted, but ultimately wasn't anything special. And I think he's built a team that's very much so in his image. Good, well coached, follows the rules, it's but doesn't have the X factor to get over the line. And he needs that. He needs the X factor to get over the line, but we could have won domestic cups too. And I think the majority of that is because when it's do or die, he can't tap into the psyche of the players to get them into a mode of they feel confident to play their game in a match where there's a lot of pressure on. When the pressure is there, and make no mistake, this team is under more pressure than any other Arsenal team has been in a long time because they have to win and to stop this, this gap, this trophy drought, they have to stop it. And it's growing. It's the 20 something year gap of winning the Premier League, and then it's the drought of the last couple of seasons where they know that they haven't won shit. A lot of these players have never won anything in their lives, and now they have to stop the Premier League trophy drought against really good teams. So they're under a lot of pressure. And I just don't think Arteta knows how to hone that pressure and to make it almost like a privilege for them and to live in that and to, rise to it. They crumble under it. And that comes from him. That comes from him. I don't know if he tells them everything that's good about the other team right before a game. Let me tell you guys a story, a really quick story. It has something to do with what we're talking about. And if you guys have been here, you may have heard this story before. But when I was little and I was playing club soccer, when I was younger, we might have been 13 or 14 years old. But we were going into a final against a team that was a whole thing above us. We were like silver and they were like gold, so they were in the league above us. So we were like, let's give it like a championship team playing against a Premier League side in the FA Cup final. And our coach, before the game, he didn't talk any tactics. He didn't tell us shit. He didn't tell us anything about the other team. He pulled us aside away from our parents and it was just us and him. And he took us individually and told each and every one of us what was great about us, played We Are the Fucking Champions, and gave us all roses and told us we were winners before the game even started. Told us everything that was good about us, played We Are the Champions, gave us roses and told us we were amazing. Did we win that fucking game? Yes. Yes, we won that game against a team that was much better than us. We didn't have no business beating them. Do you know what I mean? So when you're going up in a cup competition, it's not just about like who's better than who. We watched United beat City last season in the FA Cup. We know it's not about that shit. We've watched bad teams beat us in the FA Cup before. You need to be able to tap into the competitive side and the part of an athlete that relishes high levels of competition and winning when the pressure is on. And he can't do that. And that's the biggest gap between us and winning cup competitions. It's not about striker. It's not about none of that. You know, he's having them get pickpocketed and shit instead of learning that part. Because what is pickpockets gonna do? So yeah. Fran says meant to say missed your takes. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wore your shirt the other day and I thought about you. So I hope you're doing well. But yeah, I wore the shirt that you gave me. And I still love it. It's still so cute. MM says, I wonder if Arteta stepped into Liverpool job after Klopp, would he have been able to deal with Virgil van Dijk, Allison, Trent, and Salah egos? I mean, that's a really good question. If Arteta took over where Arne Slot has took over, because you would have said before the season started that, if you had to rank Arne Slot and Arteta, you probably would have put Arteta above him because Arne Slot was not rated outside of like some circles. Like he was very much so looked at like as a strange, candidate. Would Liverpool be in the position that they were in if Arteta had taken over? The answer is no. No. I think he would have. I mean, you could say that if he got those players, I mean, that's actually a really good question. Where do you think Liverpool would have been if they had hired Mikel instead of Arne Slot? You can make an argument that he'd be in a good position because he would have the characters within the team already that know how to win, that would take some of that burden off of his back because he can't teach the team how to win when he's never won anything. What does Arteta want? You know? So it's like he would have that, but then equally you could say that he would suffer because maybe he couldn't deal with the egos. But I don't know if I really view Virgil van Dijk and Trent and Salah and Allison as ego people. Like I feel like they're more nicer guys, but I don't know. That's a really good point. Very interesting. Boy says, I think Arteta would have fallen out with Salah or Trent. It's a good point. Sai says, I'm all up for criticizing Arteta, but lots of people are pinning things on him that he might be as exacerbated as us about, which I hear. Jalen says, Arne Slot taking over Arsenal and having these injuries would not be second. No way. That's a really good point, too. I mean, if Arne Slot came into the best job that he could have possibly come into, Klopp left him. Like most of the time, when a new manager comes in, the team is not still like as good as it was before. And I think that he came into a good situation with players with good attitudes, no bad apples really. And it was pretty much already built, had decent depth, and had players that had already won before. And the thing that I like about Arne Slot is the biggest thing that was crippling Liverpool was the fact that they couldn't run and do the rock and roll football anymore. They needed a different style of play that catered to their strengths now because they didn't have Jordan Henderson and Wijnaldum and those players anymore. They had different types of players. McAllister, they had Szoboszlai, they had different types of players that probably needed to play a more possession-based game in a game that slowed them down a little bit. And so Liverpool still play at a high level and at a high octane level and play quickly and all that kind of stuff, but they do play a little bit more like controlled possession at times, and that suits them. And Arne Slot came in and didn't try to recreate the wheel. He just fine-tuned the things that were already there. And the biggest thing is he platforms players to play to the best of their ability and uses what they do best and tries to make that better than like not use what they do well and try to make them into something that they're not. And that's probably my biggest gripe with Mikel in terms of his coaching is that with most of his players, you can look at them and say, this is their strengths. We don't play to those. But then equally, we're going to add another layer to your game that doesn't suit you at all. So Arne Slot didn't come in and do that. In fact, he rehabilitated players that people thought were dead, like Gravenberch and Cody Gakpo, so yeah. Howard says Arteta wanted a striker and he didn't say no to Watkins. He didn't say no to Watkins. But I mean, this is the problem with these types of conversations, is that that's the narrative that makes your point right, but he also had an opportunity to bring in an attacker 2 summers ago, didn't do it, brought in Kai Havertz, then told Sesko that he wouldn't start over Kai Havertz, who didn't guarantee him minutes, and didn't end up getting Sesko. So he does play a part in why we haven't gotten a striker, is because he's so enamored with the idea of Kai Havertz working that he doesn't want anything to get in the way of it. It's the ego of needing that, for him to have been the manager to unlock the Kai Havertz from Bayer Leverkusen, that he, instead of getting an attacker that was just going to solve our problem, or getting a left center mid that was just going to solve our problem, he got neither, and he's still trying to make it work to the detriment of what we're trying to do. So no, like in this January window, he wanted Ollie Watkins, and he didn't get him, and that was on the board. But equally, he said no to a body, and we could use a body right now. So yeah, it's never going to be a situation where he's not culpable in some way, you know. Sorry. Johnny says, do you really think we would be close to Liverpool right now if we had Watkins from the 13? Maybe like 7 or 8, definitely. I won't give that for the striker we need in the summer, not Watkins. It's interesting because I do think now, if Watkins had been there yesterday, he would have got on the end of Tierney's cross. Wouldn't he have? That's 3 points instead of 1. Against West Ham, could he have not? I think, again, we overthink it because we don't create a lot of clear-cut opportunities, meaning ball, goal, player, clear, that we act like they wouldn't have gotten any opportunities. But there are a lot of goals that are left on the table just because we don't have players that can sniff out where to be. We have a lot of players that don't gamble in the box. We have players that flail at the back post and don't make any sort of contact. The amount of times that I've seen the ball come across and Marino just fully miss it, that's a striker would get that. And there are just half chances that become full chances because you have somebody that can strike through the ball. So I do think that we would be closer. Would we be winning the league? Maybe not. But also, Ollie Watkins gives you a lifeline in the Champions League, where, again, in a cup competition, you don't have to be the best team. We have no chance without any striker. None. No chance. There's no chance. But in a cup competition where we're going to play against PSV, yeah, you'd feel a lot more confident if we started off a game with Nwaneri, Ollie Watkins, and Trossard, So I get what you guys are saying. I do, about, like, would Ollie Watkins win us the league? Probably not, but could he help us in the Champions League? Yeah. Yeah, he could. I think we were in a place 2 seasons ago where you would look at Ollie Watkins and maybe turn your nose up at him. But because we've allowed the team to rot and mold and not improve it, we've lost other players without capitalizing on their great form. So now we have to do even more, than we probably would have. Like, so many things would be different now. Like, I'll be really honest with you. I think if we had won the league in 22, 23, we would have won more beyond that, and some of our players wouldn't look the way that they look right now. I think a lot of this is mental fatigue as well, and the physical fatigue of not having other players to carry some of this burden. I just think, we've lost a lot of players in their form, and the way that they're playing now is all like symbiotic of like not winning anything and playing lots of minutes and no rest and all this kind of stuff. So where we were 2 seasons ago, where we could turn our nose up at Ollie Watkins, I don't really think we're there now, because we're not the best and brightest young project anymore. We are very much so looking like we're going down, so I'm not sure that we could attract the best, where we could turn our nose up at Ollie Watkins in January. But You know, I'm not a I just think we overthink it. We think we need this special, kind of perfect player, and that's something that Arteta has kind of Artetafied the fan base where it's like, we gotta get the perfect player. We don't need the perfect player. We need better than what we have now, and it's not gonna take a lot to improve on what we have right now because what we have right now is pretty bad up front. No speed, no dynamism, no 1v1, no transition inevitability, no box inevitability, no ball striking, no, there's so much missing, so yeah. Chris says, "We're talking about Watkins, but we needed proper strikers years ago. This isn't just a recent problem, it's been problem for 3 years." Yeah. No, I hear you. And I mean, like, we'd be in a much better position if we had had a situation, because look at the way we're talking. Let's back it up like 6 months. If we had our entire team, but then we had John Duran and Watkins instead of Jesus and Kai Havertz, we would be in a completely different conversation, and that's not doesn't mean that either of the strikers are world class. These are players that people would turn their noses up to now, but that's all we need. Like, that's it. Like, it doesn't have to be this brain surgery. Don't understand why it's like you guys like, do you not like Delap would improve our front line right now. Delap would would improve us right now. That's how bad it is. Like, it's so bad. Like, the Giroud that we hated, what he would be better than what we have now. Like, seriously. Y'all gonna make me say Gervinho would be better right now. That's how bad we are right now up front. No dynamism, no speed, no transition inevitability, no 1v1 prowess, no ball striking. It's bad. Like, so the only thing that limits that, like, and makes it not as bad is that we have defenders that come up with set pieces. If we take that shit out, baby, you'd be seeing the reality of the group. It's not good. It's really not. Boy says we needed a striker for years. Yeah, we did. We've needed one for a long time. We've needed a striker for a long time. And the thing is even after we bought Jesus, we should have instantly bought another number 9. We're the only club that buys one player in one position and says we're not going to ever touch it again unless it's goalkeeper or left back. You see teams buy a striker and then buy another one the very next summer, not because the first one isn't performing, but because you need more than one goal scorer in your team. You need somebody to come off of the bench. We know if we get one striker, we won't get another striker for years. We know that. We just buy one and that's it. I don't know what kind of damage that Pepe signing did, but ever since then, we've been very reluctant to really invest up front like we should. It's like I said, like City bought Julian Alvarez and bought Holland just around the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can buy more than one striker. You can have more than one attacker, Um, but we get one and we say, we're going to put all the pressure on you. So get ready, Vic says, I'm not joking. If we get Nico Williams, I'm expecting Mane levels bare minimum because that's how Arteta has projected him to the fan base. That's crazy. I don't think he'll be a Mane, but I hear you. Jado says he bought Declan Rice, who can't play anywhere in the midfield. He can play in the midfield. The problem is like, first of all, let's be real. Like, just because Arteta misprofiles and plays players in positions that don't suit them doesn't mean there's not a world where they can play in our midfield. You know, I watch players play poorly for us and then go play for their national team and do just fine. The way that Arteta uses Declan Rice is wrong. He doesn't put him in a double pivot, which would solve a lot of our problems, really. If we played him in a double pivot next to a more technical DM and just allowed to play with the number 10, that would solve a lot of our problems. But the way that Arteta uses him is more of the problem than Declan Rice not being a great player, because even though this isn't his best season, last season he was one of our players of the season, playing out of position for most of the season. And even this season, he's had bright moments. So It's not he can't play anywhere in midfield. It's Arteta doesn't know how to use his 100 million pound signing. So, um, Anton Dunn says, "I don't like the Rice signing, unseasoned footballer." And that's a big problem why people don't like Rice as well, is he doesn't fit their profile of what an Arsenal midfielder should be. And whether he's unseasoned or not, he's a top player that's rated by a lot of people. So it's not about whether, your opinion is what it is. If you don't like him, that's fine. But saying he's an unseasoned footballer, the underlying conversation there is that he doesn't fit what you think a midfielder at Arsenal should be. And to me, that's completely separate of whether or not that player can play in our midfield. I didn't like Jorginho. He's not my type of player. He's not my type of midfielder, but I don't tell lies on Jorginho. I don't say he can't play for us and play in our midfield. But I think a lot of people, it's like, well, he's not my type of midfielder, so he's shit. That's not how it works. That's not how football works. You can not like a certain type of player and not rate them or rate the type of player that they are, but like, just, yeah. We don't really have any players in our team that are shit. We really don't. We have like maybe one or two players that you can look at and you're like, yeah, you're probably not really good enough to play for us. But most of the other players, it's more about what you like versus who they are. And those are two completely different things. Um, so yeah, like I don't like that. Like, well, no, I'm not even gonna go into that. Osman says Bruno Fernandez would die to have Rice next to him. He just misprofiled him, and the thing about Mikel is that he buys a player based on what he thinks they can be, not based on what they are. And instead of leaning into the things that make Declan special and why he went down as a 100 million pound signing, he's trying to make him into something completely different, and it's killing him. But he wouldn't be the first player like that. Martinelli is not a touchline winger, but Arteta plays him like that anyway. Trossard is not a touchline winger. Arteta plays him like that anyway. He told Emile that he couldn't play left wing for us, so he basically told him to kick rocks. Emile's best position for us was left wing as like a creative left winger. He just kicked him to the curb. Fabio Vieira is just a 10. You can't play him in the 8. Killed him off. Kicked him to the curb. It wouldn't be the first player. Kivior, not a left back. Screwed him over. Just needs to play left center back. Calafiori, probably just a center back, playing him left back, and now people are saying he's a shit player when he's probably not. Arteta exposes your weaknesses. If you have a player like Calafiori, who's not fast, who, he's not a fast player, he's going to get beat for pace, and he's kind of like a slow turner, why would you play him at left back unless you are trying to make him into something he's not? Just asking. Just asking. Just asking. G Star says Martinelli is a center forward. He's cooking under Unai Emery. Arteta is killing the kid. I mean, we don't play to Martinelli's strengths. Whatever you make of Martinelli and where he's at right now, we do not play to his strengths. He's a finisher, and he's like a straight line runner that's better, like, off the shoulder, running into space, one of those types of guys, and really operates well in the box. We don't play to his strengths. We haven't played to his strengths in years, so yeah. Simon says Kala played more at left back than center back in his career. He has, but in the Premier League, that's completely different. You can do that in Italy. You can do that in Italy where you're not going to come up against the Alangas and players like that. But in the Premier League, where the game is a lot faster, it's going to be much more difficult for him to play as a left back, especially in the way that we play. So I get that, but it's just a completely different league. Like, it's completely different assignment, completely different everything. And so he basically does set him up to play against in circumstances that are not going to make him look his best, and he does that with everyone. He did it with Kivior. He's doing it with Calafiori now. Both of those, to me, they're just left center backs, and they're not going to be like Timber and White. They're just not going to be. And we're still going to continue to have problems at left back if we don't just buy a left back and just call it a day. We had Zinchenko there. He wasn't good enough defensively, and we were too exposed. You bought Kivior. He really faltered in that position because he was not a great defender in that position. Calafiori is struggling a little bit, although I do rate him and I think he's really good. When are we just going to buy a left back and call it a fucking day? Seriously, like right back is like sorted. Like left back, just buy a left back and call it a fucking day. Like stop trying to make players that the difference between Calafiori and Kivior and Timber and White is Timber and White, they're agile, like athletic players. They're agile, athletic players, smaller stature. They're players that can turn and run, more athletic. When Ben wasn't injured, he was fast, quick movements. In fullback position, you have to be quick, you know? They turn like trucks on that other side. They slow, like they can't play in those positions. Chris says 100% Nico, that midfield will not function the way some people think it will. You guys are talking about a midfield for next season. Why are we actually signing Zubimendi? Zubi, Rice, Odegaard isn't creative enough, and we'll have the same issues again against mid blocks. We spoke about this on Diluted Show, and this is a problem with this midfield is that if this was 2 years ago, I probably would have been gassed. Now, seeing our true problems, I'm less enthused, and it still leaves Odegaard in a position where he's our main creator. And the problem with that is, and I explain this, and before people come for me, think before you respond. Listen to me before you respond. Odegaard is our only creator, and he's not as good of a player as Ozil or Cesc, right? We can all agree on that. Ozil and Cesc are this level, and Odegaard is the level down, right? But they were never in teams where they were the sole creator. Ozil and Cesc were not. Do not rewrite history on me. I was there. I watched the games. Do not lie to me, because I'll pull up the receipts right now. Cesc had Rosicky and Kleb and Nasri, and he was feeding fucking Adebayor and Van Persie when Van Persie is not on the medical table. So that's a completely different scenario than even like Ozil was in. Ozil was main creator, but there was Jack, there was Ramsey, there was Carzola. There were plenty of creative players in that team, and make what you want about him and say what you want about him. Giroud is a much better striker than Kai Havertz. So you have one creator now in Odegaard in the team at once, because a lot of times we would play with, like, even if you have Saka in there, who is a creator in his own right, the left winger is a creator. You know what I mean? The left center mid was also a creator. So you had at least 2 more creators in there to carry the burden, if not 3. There's only 1. It's just Odegaard. It's literally just Odegaard, especially now with no Saka. And he's not feeding Giroud, who we hated at the time. He's not feeding Adebayor and Van Persie. He's feeding Kai Havertz. So everything has been like decreased by like 50, 60%. So if anything, if you didn't leave Cesc and Ozil on an island by themselves to be the main creator, by the way, Cesc and Ozil didn't go back and receive the ball off of the goalkeeper. Ozil, did you ever see Ozil receiving the ball off of the goalkeeper? No. Ozil, for the most part, had a free roll to do whatever the fuck he wanted. No defensive responsibilities, didn't have to help with build-up, nothing. Everybody else did that. Just find him in the pockets, in and around the box, and he's going to make it shake. That was what Ozil did. Odegaard does all that other shit and then doesn't have anybody else to help him with the creativity. That is not to take away from the fact that he's playing like shit. He's playing like shit, and he hasn't stood up, and he's really let me down this season. I expect you to at least do your game well. But the way that things are set up, if we do it like this again, where there's no creativity coming from the left center mid, and we don't have creativity on left wing, whatever, like, we're in trouble. We know this is going to be our midfield next season, so you already can count on it not having any creativity or not enough creativity. You can count on it operating very similarly to the way it operates now. So you're going to need the center forward and the left wing to be able to really operate in their own right. They need to be X factor players that can create their own moments, feed, and also be clinical. And I'm not sure that Arsenal are going to be able to identify those players or get them into where like get them to us, because it's like I don't trust them, but those players cannot just be any old players. They have to be able to. I know one thing I'm looking at is like, can you create your own shit? Do you have to have somebody feed you? Like Martinelli and Kai Havertz cannot do anything in the game unless you're feeding them. They can't create their own shots. They can't create their own moments. They can't do action after action. It's like they get it and they have to either wall pass it. They can't do anything else. That cannot happen. We cannot have players like Kai Havertz and Martinelli in the team. If you have one creator, you just can't. So, yeah, I think the midfield is pretty much set in stone. That's what you're going to see because Arteta's not going anywhere and he's very inflexible in what he wants. So that left center mid and that striker have to be something special. They have to be able to create things on their own. They do. And that's a worry because I like Nico Williams. I like Sesko. I wonder if they can carry that burden of having to create everything on their own, you know? Um, so yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Isaac says, talking about dropping deep, like who tells him to drop deep and to take the ball? Bro can't even shoot anymore. Well, if there's anybody on the pitch that does everything that the manager is telling him to do, it's probably Odegaard. So the idea that Odegaard is just doing it and Arteta's just letting him do it is naive. It's by design, and the reason why it's by design is because our left center mid is not a midfielder and hasn't been since Xhaka's left. The left center mid is very much so a low touch player that crashes the box and is a part of the front five. That player is higher than Odegaard in almost every single phase of the game. So, Odegaard is being asked to do that, not because he's just doing it because he wants to, but because he kind of has to. And so, idealistically, you'd like your creative midfielder to have more of a free role. You'd want them to just be able to create. And it's tough. You have to think like the last time Odegaard had a great goal scoring season was when he wasn't playing in the deeper role, when he was playing higher, because Xhaka was actually the one that was helping Thomas Partey and build up. And it's just a different role now. And idealistically, instead of buying Zubimendi, you drop Rice back to the 6. Odegaard could stay as an 8, and you could buy a more creative midfielder to play left 8 or as a number 10, and that would add more. But we're not going to do that, and it's going to be tough. It's tough. Sir Owen says Odegaard needs to do less chasing after the ball and play more when we have the ball to save that energy. And something that this came out from like a Liverpool fan a couple of years ago when we played against City. No, last season we played at City away. And remember we drew 0-0 and it was like a good off the ball game for us. We defended with our lives, like everybody pitched in, but we couldn't do anything going forward. And he made the point that one of the reasons why our players look so they fuck up the final action in the final third is because the energy is zapped. When you're defending, you're not in creation mode. And as much as people don't want to hear it, it's not just an Odegaard problem, it's the entire team. We're so defensive minded that when it's time to create and time to play in an attacking mode, we can't do it. So I agree with this, that there needs to be less chasing of the ball. And this is not just an Odegaard thing. This is even beyond Odegaard. This is beyond Odegaard. This is beyond like just him as an individual. This is even with Saka. Saka needs to do way less defensive work. The fact that him and Martinelli have defensive numbers like fullbacks is ridiculous. They need to focus on putting the ball in the back of the net. And the more that you defend and the more that you like your energy decreases, the brain goes. And in the final third, you need your brain because you need to be able to relax, make the right decisions, things like that. And they can't do that because they're so fucking tired, so you can't be surprised that they're broken down and that they have hamstring injuries at that, you know? Um, Isaac says, exactly, that's what I'm saying to Boy. Arteta changed the system from that season. Nico says, and Odegaard is mentally fragile. Should it be captain? You can strip the captaincy from him, but that's not going to make you win the league. You know, I think that that's something for the fans because they want somebody to take something from, or, you know, it's like, you're not the captain anymore. But if you gave the captaincy to Gabriel tomorrow, or he had it from the beginning of the season, we'd be in the exact same place. It wouldn't change anything. I hate to tell you that. Like, that's kind of like our last problem. You could make that a big problem, but Odegaard not being a great captain in your eyes doesn't mean that everybody else is it's okay for them to play like shit because he's not the only one not playing well. So if Vieira had a bad game, Sol Campbell and them would not sit on their hands and play like shit. So everybody needs to take responsibility. Whether you have that piece of, you know, elastic around your arm, you could strip him of the captaincy. You know, Gabriel was captain when we lost to Bournemouth and we played like shit then. So, you know, it's not going to change anything unless we like, it's just such a small problem. I get it. It would make the fans feel better because they have like this, it's like a vanity thing. It's like he's not the type of captain I want, so I need to see him get stripped of the captaincy, but we'd still lose games, we'd still play like shit, we still wouldn't be able to create chances, like all that stuff would be the same. So, yeah. Johnny says that toxic positivity is capped. There's no such thing. People are allowed to be happy even when they don't win. It's like me saying I want a woman like Jess if I'm not going to be miserable all my life. Burmy says the signing of number 29 has contributed to Arteta's. It's led to the current mess. I mean, it was the first domino, that's for sure. And it's not even just like just buying Kai. It's not replacing Granite. And people won't like hearing that. And I don't even like saying that. Like, I don't even like saying it because I think Xhaka was overrated at the club and he's been overrated ever since. But two things can be true at the same time, that he's not as good as people made him out to seem, but he was definitely like a load-bearing wall. And ever since he's left, our midfield hasn't looked the same. Nothing has looked the same. It's all collapsed on itself. That was the last time that we had three midfielders doing the roles that suited them the best. Arteta had figured out the perfect role for Granite, the perfect, you know, Partey was playing in his perfect role with the perfect players around him to not let him be on an island by himself. And Odegaard was playing his perfect role. And it's no surprise that all of those players had a great season. But we've lost that balance ever since Xhaka hasn't been there. But the main difference between Xhaka and Rice, to me, is that Xhaka also contributes creatively. Like he basically managed the left-hand side. Like him and Zinchenko were such a great like combination. They managed the left-hand side and kept the left-hand side ticking and put us in a situation where Martinelli could just do Martinelli things, which we've lost that ever since. On top of that, he also dropped into a double pivot. And so Odegaard just was basically had like a free-ish role. And Xhaka did a lot of the stuff that Odegaard is doing now. It's switched. You know, Odegaard was the free player that was contributing to the attack. Now he's the Xhaka role, which doesn't really suit him as much. And we have nobody doing the Odegaard role from 2 seasons ago. So Arteta thinking that Havertz could be that person and then inevitably having to move Declan into that role, which they've all tried to make us feel like that was what we were trying to do, but it wasn't. What Arteta wanted to do was exactly what he did at the beginning of last season. He wanted to put a defender or a midfielder at fullback and move them into basically he wanted to play the diamond. He wanted to play the diamond and he was willing to destroy everything that we built the season before to put us in the diamond. He wanted that diamond bad, so badly so that he's tried it for like a couple of games and it didn't work. It was shit. Oh my gosh, that diamond was like a headache. Partey at right back, Rice in like the 6, but was actually left 8. Odegaard on the right-hand side and Havertz playing below Nketiah. Oh my God, like it was so bad. And so Arteta has created this monster, this shit sandwich, and it's just like who is playing to their strengths? Can anybody name a player that's actually playing to their strengths that you're like, we're playing to make this player look the best? Because Saka prevails beyond playing for two managers that do not know how to play attacking football. That's how good Saka is. Saka is so good that he can be one of the best wingers in the world despite playing for Mikel Arteta and Gareth Southgate, because neither one of them play good attacking football and platform their attackers properly. They both have very similar issues where they want a more defensive-minded midfield, and their attackers don't play freely. Like, there's just, it's fucking insane. Saka is our best player, and that's why I feel like he's the one player that still looks good no matter what we're doing. But even he could have a freer role. But Martinelli, we don't play to his strengths. I don't know what Havertz's strengths are, but fuck it. I don't know what his strengths are. I don't. We don't really play to Odegaard's strengths. We don't play to Rice's strengths. I think we leave Partey on an island by himself when Rice is so far up. So to me, that's not playing to his strengths. Our fullbacks are, I don't know. You could say we're playing to their strengths, but most of them are center backs. So I don't know. Maybe Saliba and Gabriel play to their strengths. I don't know. But more players need to be platformed better, The Cosmic Moth says Arteta falls in love with his own ideas and will refuse to give up on them when they don't work out and cost us points. Exactly. That was that was so obvious when he drug Havertz over to the fans after we beat Brentford 1-0 and he came on. It was so obvious in that moment. Arteta doesn't show a lot of emotion, especially not to his players. He drug him over to the away fans and he's been telling people that Kai Havertz needs love. He doesn't say that about anyone else. Why are we so desperate to make this guy work? Crazy. The way I cringed when he did that, I was like, you're so desperate to make this work. He scored a goal, bro. Who cares? I feel like that was his first goal or something too. So I kind of get it, but he's not like that with anyone else. Calafiori ran to him after scoring at the Etihad, for God's sake. And Arteta was Calafiori hugged him and Arteta's all stiff and shit. It's but when it comes to this one player, it's this player, I'm going to give all the love and attention and TLC to. Crazy. Jado says Rice didn't play as a 6 at West Ham. He is hidden in a double pivot with Souček. That's why he can't play 6. I mean, hidden. I've noticed that you use a very negative spin on everything. What you're trying to say is that Rice is better in a double pivot. He wasn't hidden. You can't hide a player that's that good. Before Rice came to Arsenal, whether you liked him or not, from the greater footballing world, he was highly rated. Pep Guardiola wanted him. Tuchel wanted him. Those are two teams that are better than us, by the way. Man City and Bayern are better teams than us. They're better clubs than us. So he could have went to better clubs than ours. After being hidden at West Ham, he wasn't hidden. He wasn't hidden. He just plays better in a double pivot. It suits his strengths better. There's nothing wrong with having strengths. You could be elite at something specific. He's not elite at the things that are an 8 is supposed to have. And that's not a problem unless you have a manager that can't quite wrap his head around it. So I get what you're trying to say. You're trying to make it seem like Rice is some shit guy, but wouldn't be saying that. I mean, he could have won a trophy already. He could have won the treble already if he wasn't here with us. So he's not being hidden, and it's so strange how people talk about our players because we have such good players in our team. We definitely need better in some positions, but yeah, there's just certain players where it's objectively they're a good player, whether they're your type of player or not. Here to There says Declan's superior athleticism, physicality is his superpower. He's not fully fit this year, so of course he isn't as top form. And one of the things that annoys me is when he is at top form, we don't utilize it correctly. Like Declan, I forget what game it was, but he pressed really well from the front. And I think that's one thing that Arteta does try to use him for the 8-4 is when he's higher up, he can press better and we can create chances from that. And he created like a clear-cut chance for Kai Havertz and he kicked it wide. I want to say maybe that was against City. And of course, then, and that would have been either the go-ahead goal or an equalizer. I can't remember, but it was going to be an important goal and he didn't score. And then he ended up scoring like the 4th goal and everybody was like, he made it up. He didn't, because he didn't score the goal that, all goals are not created equal, but he does have an elite set of skills that need to be utilized in a certain way, and we just don't utilize them. To me, Rice is just, he's objectively one of our best players, and whether you like him or not, he's objectively one of our best players. And he at least has one elite skill set where we have quite a few players on our team that don't do anything. They're jack of all trades, masters of none. So I'd rather take that than having players that have like very averagey skills and everything. Ivy says Rice was great for us last season when Partey wasn't available, not having the Rice slander at all. That's the whole thing right there. Why are we expecting Rice to make goals for people? I don't know. Johnny says, well, Jess, when you put it like that, I'm starting loving Rice more and more. He's being fed legends of North London that blinded him to the city present. How nice of him to be lied so mischievously. Burmy says it seems like Arteta is trying to have Marino imitate Kai's style of play in the 9 role. Can I be honest? I don't remember a single thing Marino did yesterday. So if you noticed that he was doing that, I didn't, because I didn't notice anything. All I saw was that he was doing a lot of fucking fouling, but I don't like the Kai roll up front. I just want us to simplify things. Like, I think it's all great and well and fine to have things that allow you to have more in certain areas. Like, it allows you to have an overload in midfield, overloads out wide, more attackers in the final third. I love those types of wrinkles to your tactics, but what it seems like is we have players that shouldn't be in certain places occupying those areas, and the players that should be there are nowhere to be found. So instead of Marino being in the box arriving, you have Calafiori arriving in the box arriving. Instead of Kai Havertz being in the box arriving, you have Timber in the box arriving. And so instead of having 5-6 players in the box, you still have like 4, but they're not even attackers, and I know that Calafiori is probably a better attacker than some of our others, but idealistically, you just want your attackers to be in the box, and you add someone, not have your attackers outside of the box and non-attackers in the box. It's all you lose something where, early on when we first got Jesus and Zinchenko, we had like a super overloaded midfield because Jesus would drop deep and Zinchenko would pinch in. So we'd have 5 midfielders in there at once, so we always had an overloaded midfield. We always controlled the midfield. We always dominated the midfield. That's how we played. And then by Jesus dragging people, then we would always have space in behind to run into because he would drag the center backs or drag somebody in for us or even drift left so that Martinelli could drift forward. So we would have these overloads. Jesus would go from side to side and give us an overload on the left, and then it will open things up on the right. We're always without something now. It doesn't ever feel like we have an overload in midfield. It always feels like we have one less. We have inverted fullbacks. Everybody is inside. Nobody is outside. There's nobody holding the width. It's the inverted fullbacks has to go. That is one thing that if I could get rid of it tomorrow, I would get rid of it. They don't overlap enough. They don't create width. They're not good in the final third. It is like, it's really like they don't pinch in and create more in midfield. They're just there, and it's crazy. Andrew says Tim, another center back, along with White and Calafiori, the team is in a mess. We don't have like a single natural fullback except for Tierney. it would be nice to have at least one that can just do normal fullbacky things. Like, I think the center backs is fine to a certain extent, but they don't really offer the midfield overload that you would want. And again, when they're not playing in midfield, or they're playing in midfield and your midfielders are covering for them, like Rice will cover for Calafiori and Calafiori will go forward, or, like vice versa. You have less technical players or less midfielders actually there because now your fullbacks are in there. So there's always less than there should be, whether it's from a talent perspective or a numerical perspective, but there's never an overload anywhere. Where do we overload anything? I don't see it. I just don't get it, so we never seem like we have more. It always seems like we have less. And like sometimes when we're attacking, you look up there, it's like four of us maybe and like six defenders. And that group is not going to be able to create anything without an overload up front. Arteta doesn't want to take the risk, to push more forward or to have more attackers. And when he's down a goal, instead of adding more attackers, he changes the CDM, he changes the fullback. It's crazy. I know this is kind of everywhere, but it's like, what the fuck, Jordan says Arne Slot is targeting Jarrell Hato and Kirkes, fullbacks for fullbacks, nothing complicated. No center backs trying to invert, none of that crap. Arteta is always overcomplicating. Andrew says, and we are selling Tierney and probably Zinni, which is madness. And this is how desperate I am to not look at the back anymore. I would keep Zinchenko and Tierney for another season so that we did not have to buy another fullback. That's how desperate I am for everything that we need to go forward. Like, I do not want to see another fullback come through the door, another center back that we're going to convert into a fullback, but it's inevitable. You lose Zinchenko, you lose Tierney, we'll probably lose Kivior as well. It's inevitable that we'll bring in a fullback. It's inevitable that we're bringing in a defender. And we know that that'll be the first thing coming through the damn door. And it's annoying. And to be honest, if we just had better attackers and a more fluid and, effective attack, we wouldn't care if our fullback couldn't overlap as much. We wouldn't care if, Timber was, couldn't cross the ball, but we need those players to get into the attack because the attackers are dead. Like, it's crazy. Timber really needs to work on his what he's doing in the attack. I think he's tired. So I'll give him that. I think at the beginning of the season, he was much better in the final third. But right now, the funny thing about Timber is you don't have to ever worry about the defensive part of the game. That side has been locked down ever since he's played there. And I'm so grateful for that because there were times where White was getting targeted so badly. And it was like, okay, what are we doing here? But it does feel like he needs a lot of work in the final third. But it could also just be the case that we just need to make our midfielders and our attackers do the attacking and leave the defenders to do the defending. Because surely if you have center backs getting into your attack, you shouldn't need them. They should be extra, but they shouldn't be your only way of attacking. Because when I tell you they have no juice in the final third, like Tierney coming on and putting in good crosses is like, wow, because these guys can't cross a damn ball. Here to There says, with all of our issues, Partey has actually been good all year. Zubimendi isn't an upgrade on Partey's level this year. I think Partey has had spotty form, and he's not somebody you can rely upon physically. So with Jorginho leaving, I don't know, but I understand what you're saying there. Boy says, I sell all of Zinchenko, Kivior, and KT. I sign Hato, a complete defensive unit. We won't get him if Liverpool is looking at him. Johnny says, I don't think Tierney will stay another season. He's always wanted to play, nothing more. Yeah, I'm just saying in general, if I would just keep them, I would just keep them if I had the choice. So I don't have to look at another goalkeeper because we're gonna get that Juan Garcia goalkeeper, and we're gonna probably get Zubimendi, and we'll probably get a defender. But we're still unsure about what's going to happen in the final third, and that makes me nervous. Pixel says, one thing I agree with Mikel is that other teams without a forward line would not be in the top four. I get that. I understand that, but we've just now gotten to the place where we're missing everyone, and we're not at the end of the season yet. And so he can say that now, but most of the reason why we're still 6 points ahead of anybody below us is mostly due to the fact that we haven't played without all these attackers yet. You know, ever since we haven't had any of them, we've been really, really poor. The last 2 games, we haven't scored a goal, so he should speak at the end of the season. If we still are in the top 4 at the end of the season, he can say that, but there's still a real possibility that we could fall out, especially if we can't score any goals right now, because we did not look like scoring at all in either of those games. So he can talk now, but you've only not had all your attackers for a couple of weeks, you know? So, yeah. Oh, Sanuga says we should be prioritizing at least 3 attackers instead of focusing on second goalkeeper. We can use Raya and Hein until January and then buy a keeper if needed. Focus on the attack. I agree with this. The longer it goes on, the more I think we need 3, not 2. But if we got 1, I'd be surprised because I just know how this club operates. If they're going to get blanked by Isak. They're going to try to get Isak. They're not going to get him. Then they're going to go for Sesko. Something's going to happen there. Somebody will beat us to him or something like that. And then they'll be sitting around like, what do we do now? I don't know what we do now. Do we get it? And it's just going to be like, oh my gosh. You guys are so annoying. The Cosmic Moth says, I'm not impressed with Arteta being able to get top 4 anymore, even with the decimated squad. I know he can make top 4. I don't know if he can go any further than that. Let's just say there's a lot of time left in the season. So as much as I understand that we're in the top 4 right now and we look relatively comfortable, if we don't improve, we will lose more games because the thing is we fucked up all the games where we played the lower level teams. And this was scary, like when it was happening and people were like, yeah, but we won and I was like, okay, relax. Like the end of our season is not that easy. We cannot beat teams in the top 10. That's our reality. This season, teams in the top 10, we don't beat. We struggle with this season. There are no more games against, have we played Southampton home and away? We might have a Southampton game. We've played Leicester home and away. We've played Everton at home. Playing them away is going to be difficult, and we drew to them at home. We're going to struggle. Nottingham Forest was mostly a defensive job. Couldn't beat West Ham at home. So there are not a lot of Leicesters left. Yeah, we played Leicester home and there's not a lot of Leicesters left. We struggled to score against Leicester away from home. Arteta should talk at the end of the season, because where the goal's going to come from. Pixel says top 4 is a dream for the owners on the commercial side, UCL revenue, sponsorships, exposure. Let me ask a toxic question really quick. What do you think is more detrimental? Is Arteta and Arsenal getting top 4 this season, or if we fell out? Do you think that the Cronkies would make a more drastic move and move, Arteta on or something like that if we didn't make it? Because I don't ever want us to lose, but I know that if we make top 4, they'll look at it as a good season because of all the injuries. But if we didn't make top 4 and they fucked the January transfer window and didn't do anything because they thought we were going to make it, I just wonder. It's just a little toxic thought. Boy says, if only that was City of last season, honestly. Jordan says we're royally fucked. MM says Ipswich away looks tough if they're fighting relegation. I mean, that could be another Luton. Luton was fucking crazy last season, and we barely made it with the skin of our teeth. And we are not playing like that now. So we are not playing like that now. So Ipswich looks crazy right now. And any team that are in the top 10, we're going to struggle with. Any team that's decent, we're struggling. And we barely beat, fucking Wolves, and I know that we were down a man, but it's still Wolves, come on. Cosmic Moss says CL is probably going to be top 5 this season, so we'd really have to crumble. Yeah. Jotto says United looks difficult for fuck's sake. Theo says the Cronkies do have a history of making big investments when top four is in danger. That's all I'm saying is I'm not saying that I want us to do it, but I do feel like we'd have to fall out of Champions League for Arsenal to make any drastic changes and for them to throw Mikel to the Wolves. I need drastic change, like badly. I don't think just another transfer window and Arteta getting Sesko and Nico Williams and Zubamendi and a goalkeeper is going to be enough for us to get us to where we're supposed to be. But maybe I'm just negative, maybe I'm just, maybe I'm just feeling, down in the dumps. Maybe that's all we do need. It just feels like so much more is needed, more from the manager. I mean, like for him to be like a completely different person and drop this pragmatic act. Aha says also, Jess, I was thinking we should go 3 at the back with what we have. Ben White, right wing back. Timber, right center back. Tross, Wanyeri up top. More defenders available can offer us something different in attack. The only thing is changing the formation is never a thing because Arteta, ever since he's done a 4-3-3, hasn't changed. So I'd love us to be more flexible and be able to play different types of formations, but that's not the type of manager Mikel is. We play a 4-3-3 no matter what's going on. So we'll run that into the ground, but I hear what you're saying. Blank Face says, guys, I've been waiting for Arsenal to be great since I was a child. I'm 25. I don't care about Arteta. I'm lucky I'm old enough to have seen what a good Arsenal team looks like and what it looks like when we're going to win something. And that's why when the beginning of the season, people were like, oh, I just think it's our season. I just think it's our season. And I'm like, why? And they're just like, it just is. It just feels like it. I'm like, it never just feels like it. And you're looking at this shit, like when the Invincibles were playing, I hate to be that like old person, but you could just tell. You could just tell we were going to win something. Not only because it was a requirement, because the club was serious back then, but they just looked like a team that was going to win. They didn't start off slow so that they could, have energy at the back end of the season. They didn't play like shit and couldn't pass to each other, but were getting over the results. They were just beating teams. Like they were just beating teams and playing good and scoring goals. They didn't have these problems. They had injuries, but they would just get over it. They had a deep squad. And we were meant to win multiple competitions. We went deep in every competition. It was just normal and it was regular. Ever since we got to the Emirates, it's become such a like normalized thing where it's like it's just going to magically happen. It doesn't. When you're going to win a title, it's obvious. It doesn't sneak up on you. It doesn't sneak up on you. When we were good in 2022, 2023, it was obvious from preseason. From preseason, it was obvious that we were really fucking good. And about 10 games in, we knew we were good enough to win the league. And we were good enough to win the league that season. We bottled it. So it doesn't sneak up on you. You don't just become good, midway through the season and then people are like, oh yeah. No, it happens pretty fucking quickly and but the last 2 seasons we've started off slow and played shit in preseason. And have we looked like we're going to win the league? No, it doesn't sneak up on you. You're good from the beginning and you know it and the players know it and they're not telling you with like their eyes glazed over. They know it. They have not looked the same as they did in 2022, 2023 because they knew they were good then. They played with like, they played like we know we're good. They ain't played like that since. They went to Anfield and for the first like 30 minutes, they played like a team that knew that they were good. And I know that we dropped off at the end, but we haven't went to a big side and played like that since then. We haven't went to the Etihad or Anfield and played with any sort of confidence like we did in that game in those first 30 minutes. Like Here to There says we got a record amount of penalty kicks and set pieces last year. Of course, it was not sustainable. Yeah, but we scored 91 goals. That's what I keep being told. But we scored 91 goals and Havertz scored goals, so it was fine. No, it wasn't, you guys. When we needed to score, we did not score. We went to the Allianz Arena But first of all, we played against a really poor Bayern, probably one of the worst Bayerns that you've ever seen. Played like shit at home. We shit the bed after Ben White missed that first chance for us to go 2-0. Because we have so many chances in games to get that 2-0. We get the first goal, and then the 2-0 comes around. Instead of putting the fucking knife in them, we let them stay around. Instantly after we miss that chance that Ben White has to put away, we start to let the scaries come in, and then they start doing their thing, and we let them walk away with no fans in the stadium, by the way, with a draw. We went to the Allianz Arena and played like little scaredy cats. You know, I don't know why people are holding on to that 91 goals. They're like holding on to it for dear life. Like, but we scored 91 goals. I don't give a fuck. We went to Allianz Arena, didn't have a shot on goal. You know, we went to Porto and shat the bed. We didn't even really, we barely got over it at home. Couldn't score at home against Aston Villa. Couldn't score at home against Liverpool. Couldn't score at home against West Ham. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care about those 91 fucking goals. We scored a lot of goals in a small amount of time, but when it came down to it and we really had to, we did exactly what we always do. Shit the fucking bed. Johnny says, yeah, Jess, it was obvious we were bottlers. Now we have a team of bottlers. If Arteta turns this around, it's nearly a miracle at point. I mean, the fact that the pressure of not winning the first season, so like, because here's the way that they should have been thinking about it. We surprised ourselves that we were much better than we thought we were going to be at the beginning of the season. We missed out, but that means that we have experience for this next coming season, and we're going to win this next season. We're going to spend $200 million, and we're going to be right there because now we know we're good enough. Instead of that being the mentality, we went into, oh my gosh, we didn't win it. Are we ever going to win it again? Oh my gosh, City, hyper focus on City. City's so good. Are we going to be able to beat City? Oh my gosh. And they just got, instead of feeling like they could get better and win it, they crumbled under the pressure in the second season of us challenging. And that to me comes from the manager. You should be able to make them feel like, take the pressure off. Take the pressure off. A manager can make the pressure worse or take the pressure off. And I envy the way that sometimes I feel like Liverpool play because they never look like they're under pressure, ever. I don't remember the last time I watched them and I thought they look like they're playing under pressure. I feel like it was the one season where they were missing a lot of players and they barely made top 4. That was the last time that they looked like they were playing under pressure. But for the most time, they don't look like they're playing under pressure. They don't look stressed. They don't look like it's do or die every single game. From the very beginning of last season and the very beginning of this season, it's always felt like do or die every single game. If we lose this game, it's done. It never rolls off. There's always another loss around the corner because we just can't get into the mind frame. That's from the manager to me. Boy says, I got cussed out for saying the players were at their limits before the injuries hit. I wonder if I get cussed out now. And Jordan says, if I were the players, I wouldn't turn up to training. I wouldn't show up for match day and go on strike. They're not going to do that. They're nice boys. Mata says, Rice calling out Tierney playing left wing. Someone help us. Here to there says, Arteta went into Galaxy Brain, panic, rip everything up, overpay, and cater to a Chelsea reject. Yep, the Galaxy Brain panic and rip everything up is 100% what he did. He didn't need to do that. From 2022, 2023, we didn't have to change everything. We needed to stay on that path. Like, I was in a mixed company when I was on Judge Mo's show, if you guys were watching, but Hussam has said multiple times that he felt like the best that he's seen Arsenal play under Mikel Arteta was 2022, 2023. And although I do think that at the back end of last season, we played some good football, that was the last time I actually felt like the team was playing at such a confidence level that there was never going to be a game where I felt like we couldn't score a goal. And I feel like that's the difference between feeling like you can win and lose is you always know that you could score, but there were even times at the back end of last season where it just didn't feel like we were going to score. There are too many games like that. But in that 2022, 2023 season, there was not a single game except for maybe the Etihad away when we'd already pretty much bottled the league. We already it was gone already. Where I thought we could not score, and I don't understand why he would go away from that completely. All we really needed was another attacker, maybe two, you know. We could have bought Rice and he could have been an addition. That would have been fine. But you needed to replace Granite, bring in an attacker. You could have still gotten Declan and gotten Timber. And they were just like, nah, nah, that's not what we're gonna do. It's crazy. Blank Face says he just needed to fix the defense and strengthen the attack. I was never Arteta out before. It was when he started playing scared that I lost my confidence in him. We were so close, and then he undid it all. And if you go back to his first interview where he spoke about the type of football that he wants to play, what we're doing now is not anything like that. The only time that we played like that was in that season, that first season that we challenged, where he basically said attack, attack, attack in his first interview at Arsenal. He wants to attack all the time. He wants to have the ball. He wants to, be dangerous. He wants to and dominate. We do not do that anymore. We're very much like fake, like very much so like we're confident and we're winning and we have all the possession, but the possession is just to keep you from scoring against us, not for us to score against you. And that's the difference. But I think it's hard to get behind Mikel because we need an Arsenal manager with confidence. The Arsenal manager should have confidence. They should have, for lack of a better word, aura. They need to be somebody that exudes Arsenal. And Arteta gives off a little bit of like somebody said up here, like imposter syndrome type of thing, where he talks a big game because they asked him if he thinks the title race is over, and he's like, over my dead body. And it's like, give it up. Like, we don't believe you because you play scared, so, and every time that we need to win, we don't, so why am I going to believe over your dead body? Like, well, you're dead. Burmese says this has been a disaster despite coming second 2 years in a row. And now it looks like getting UCL will be a struggle. Big says Willian, check 29, Louise, historically, why do we pick up their trash? It's not even, you can go further back. And look at what's his name? The defender that we got from him that we made our captain and gave him the number 10. What was his name? Forgot. You guys will you'll name him. But it goes way back, this obsession with getting their leftovers. It's not just those. Because you'll add him to that, and then you add, it's not just Willian Check, it's also Jorginho as well. No offense to him, I like him, but we have Raheem Sterling on our books right now. It's way more than just those players. Pixel Pioneer says, but I feel like we criticize him when he doesn't adapt, yet when he changes it up and mixes it up, we complain. We all wanted him to experiment new ideas like prime. I feel like Gallas, yeah, because I was thinking, what's his name? William, but it's William Gallas. Yeah, I forgot his last name. I think with Arteta, he changes things up, but I don't think the problem is that people want to see him switch things up in the pragmatic setting. What we want to see is for him to let the defenders defend. And you have some of the best defenders in the world. You have a great goalkeeper. You have Timber, White. You have Gabriel and Saliba. Those are a great group of defenders. And then you also have one of the best defensive midfielders, somebody that's mostly there to stop goals from coming in. Instead of just allowing those players to do their job and let the attackers attack more, they're defending more. And so it's taken away from, it's like, well, why would you get Declan Rice and keep adding to the defense and making it better by Timber and stuff like that, and get Raya if you're just going to double down and be even more defensive? Because Saka and Martinelli are defending more than they did in 2022, 2023. So we get the whole, like, when he changes things up, people complain, especially when it doesn't work out. But the one change that I've never seen is him trying to make the attack more fluid and make us more attacking. I've like never really seen that. I've seen him half-ass it here and there by trying to put Fabio or Emil at left center mid, but he doesn't change the role. He changes the person, but the role is the same. And so now you have somebody in the left center mid that's even less suited to it than Rice would be, or whoever else we had at the time. But you have a person that's less suited for it, but you haven't changed the role to suit what they do best. And so when he changes things and we're asking for more attacking and stuff like that, he kind of does it, but he doesn't. He's very rigid. The roles are always the same. The wingers are touchline wingers and are very much so isolated to basically we pass it to them and say, get past 3 or 4 players. There's maybe one person in the box, maybe. Our midfielders stay out of the box mostly, unless it's the left center mid and we let them push up. But it's never really like that different. It's really not. He can change the people, but the role is almost always pretty much the same. World Boss says, I still can't believe we have no main striker. I'm absolutely traumatized by this. Is so funny. Seriously, if you would have told me in 2025 that we would still not have a striker, I would be like, when the window closed in the summer and we had Raheem Sterling, I was done. Like that's when I know that I went fully negative. I was like, I'm trying to make it nice for y'all, but I'm just so uninterested in what's going on this season because I know we're gonna be fucked. Like it's just you cannot sign Raheem Sterling, Marino, and Calafiori and look me in the face and think that you're gonna tell me that you want to win shit. There's no fucking way, you know. So I understand being traumatized, especially because in the past we've been blessed with great strikers. And you know, whether you started watching back when it was like Ian Wright, you know, if you grew up in Thierry era, if you started watching and it was Adebayor and Van Persie, if you came in and it was even fucking Welbeck, you know, you came in and it was Giroud, you came in and it was Aubameyang, any of those options are like at least 10 times better than what the fuck we got now, you know? And so this would be a nightmare. This would traumatize you because this is just not it. Like we need a striker. We need a striker bad. And the more that people start suggesting players that are still false 90, the more I'm like, no, let's just get somebody that scores goals. Let's just do something that we've never done, but like we haven't done before under Mikel. What we've done is everybody can do a bunch of shit. And I love players that are versatile and have more than just one tool in the toolbox. But when you have a bunch of jacks of all trade and master of none and no specialist in any position, you get what you got with us now. Sometimes you need players that are just good at one thing, you know, and you just let them be good at that one thing. And if that's striking, let it be striking, you know, let it be striking. I don't really want somebody that drops in and creates and all that kind of stuff. I want somebody that bangs that ball in the back of the net. And that's all they care about. And that's all that they do. You know, I don't want anything else. I'm not looking for, yeah, but Cunha would. No, not as our main striker, guys. We already have enough guys that do all that kind of shit. I need somebody that bangs the ball in the back of the net. I want somebody that is unequivocally a traditional number 9. That's what I want. Because you know what? You're not going to find another Thierry. Thierry did a lot of other stuff. He was a great dribbler. He was fast. He created. He did all this stuff. Thierry was a one of one. Most players are just not good at everything. I know you guys are looking at Isak and you're like, but Isak is unattainable. Most guys are either really good at one thing or the other, or they're not good at shit. I want somebody that's good at the one thing that we don't have, which is scoring goals. That's it. Score me some goals. I don't give a fuck if you have a bad touch. Just put the ball in the back of the net. I am so done with this whole idea of, you know, they need to be more all around and all this kind of stuff. No. Take the shot. Ivy says, I rather a specialist than utility players, but Arteta never sees them that way. And the difference between somebody that's like multifaceted and somebody that's a utility, somebody that's multifaceted is good at a lot of shit, you know? But then there's players that are more utility that can kind of do a little bit of everything. Those are two completely different things. Now, players that are multifaceted are very expensive, but they're very useful. A player that I would say is multifaceted is Bruno Guimaraes. He's kind of good at everything. He scores goals, he's a good passer, he's a good defender, great dark arts, all that type of stuff. He's a very well-rounded midfielder, very well-rounded. There's not really anything that he's really bad at, you know? That's multifaceted. When you have somebody that's a utility, that's more of like a Marino. You like Marino, it's kind of could do a little bit of everything, but he's not elite enough like to be multifaceted. He's not somebody that you'd want starting all the time, where a Bruno Guimaraes is somebody that you'd want starting all the time. And I think Arteta has too many like utility guys, like guys that can do a little bit of everything, but he doesn't have any like the multifaceted guys he's not getting, and he's also not getting specialists. So you need kind of like a group of all of that, and you don't have that. Like Gabriel is like a specialist defender. He can do a little bit of the passing and all that kind of stuff, but he's like a specialist. I would say Saliba is multifaceted. Maybe you could put Gabriel in multifaceted as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, because he's a good passer of the ball, he's a great defender, he scores goals. So yeah, Saliba and Gabriel are multifaceted. Raya is multifaceted. Saka is multifaceted. Like they can do a lot of shit at a high level. They're not utility guys, We got too many players on that other scale. Pixel says, was Marino signed as a starter or as a squad player? Because I don't think he starts when everyone is fit. I think he's a squad player. Here to there says Arteta warped the system. The purpose of a false nine is to serve the inside forwards. Arteta has our wingers serving a non-finisher 29. It's backwards. Exactly. Here to there, you and me are on the same page. It always seems like the person that's supposed to be doing something is like the person that's in the position is not the right person for it. It's weird. Like, it's weird. It's just all backwards. Exactly what you're saying. Like, if you have a Firmino, because when people were saying that Havertz could be our Firmino, I was like, we need to stop, with this name. Don't use the name, because Firmino was, first of all, a top footballer. He was a top footballer. Havertz is an average footballer in terms of control, manipulating the ball, skills, that kind of stuff, passing. He's incredibly average at all those things. With the ball, Havertz is incredibly average. Firmino with the ball was like a top quality player. And he would serve Salah and Mane. And even though Salah and Mane could also create, their main goal was to put the ball in the back of the net. And they did that. Havertz doesn't create anything for Saka and Martinelli, but Martinelli and Saka, mostly Saka, are trying to create for somebody that isn't even in the box half the time. Make that shit make sense, And we did play more that style 2 years ago, where like Gabriel Jesus was helping, serve Martinelli and Saka, and that worked for us. And then everybody pitched in, but the system changed. The system changed. Jesus changed, after the injury, and so we need to change. We need to update, and Martinelli and Saka in particular are pretty decent players when you can get them into positions to put the ball across the box, but there's never anybody there. So it's like, who are they creating for? Havertz half the time isn't even in the box. You didn't know where the ball is. Like, yeah. Conrad, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, Jess, they're not spending $200 million this summer. Injured players on high wages and healthy guys they want to sell are overpaid and they sell to buy. Exactly. And that's why if I had to give up anything, I would give up the defender. I would just re-sign Neto and call it a day. I don't give a fuck how bad he was in that one game. I would take a branch and, glue it together with a couple other branches and put it back there and have it looking like a little scarecrow back there and say that was our number 2. That's how badly I don't want to spend any money on a number 2 goalkeeper or a defender, because all the money needs to go forward. And you don't even have to spend $200 million to do what we want to do, but you could spend like $100 on a striker and a winger if you have a great DOF that knows how to identify talent. The biggest problem that we have is that we always have to spend at a premium because we don't have a DOF that can identify talent before it slaps us in the face. And so that all goes back to the DOF. We don't have to spend 200 million to improve the team. You can go out there and get somebody like Ryan Shirky. I know he has a bad attitude, but that bad attitude will give you a discount. He's somebody that if you want a number 10 that offers you more creativity, that's somebody that could probably be in the Premier League because he's not like going to get thrown around. He's somebody that you could bring in for 30 something million. You can get Alex Baena for 40 million. You can get a bunch of players for those types of fees. We just can't get them because one, Arteta needs to see them in the Premier League because they can't identify talent before. So it's not about how much they cost. We need a better DOF that can identify these talents. Like, we don't need to spend that much. We don't need 200 million to get the shit done. Emmanuel says, I blame Arteta because the Cronkies gave him money and he chose to spend it on Jesus and Havertz. It's crazy. Boy says, we need to spend 300 million, bros. Men are balking at 200 million. We just know we're not going to spend that amount. If I had my druthers, of course I'd say 300 million, let's go. But we're not going to have that amount. Vic says, I saw this pop up on X from 2022, 2023 to 23, 24. We gained only 4 points despite spending 200 million with Saliba and Gabriel being fit all season. If you see it from this POV, it's alarming. And I think that summer was the beginning of the end, for whatever we were trying to do, because we just didn't buy the types of players that were going to change what we needed to change from that season. We needed to improve in midfield. That was for sure, because Xhaka was leaving. And we knew that we needed one, if not two midfielders. I remember us having those conversations. Defensively, we needed to figure out something. So Timber was a fine signing. I think that signing was fine. I know that he tore his ACL, but that's completely just unlucky. So then you go to the midfield, and what you needed to do was, even if you bought Rice, you needed to replace Granit Xhaka. And if you were going to spend 100 million on a player, like, that player needs to solve the problem, and you need to know where you're going to play him. And then we needed to buy an attacker. I remember that summer very clearly. We were talking about Kudus. We were talking about Xavi Simons as like an auxiliary attacker that can kind of play multiple positions, that could add something to the 10 position and also add something out wide. And then we spoke about maybe a striker. At that point, like, we didn't really know what was going to happen with Jesus, so I don't think people were pushing for that as much, but they were pushing for some sort of attacker to come in to supplement what we already had. This was before Martinelli fall off. This was before Odegaard fall off. So of course we felt like we were in a strong position. You could have brought in just like more of an auxiliary person. We did not do that. So we didn't get the attacker. And then we also didn't get the midfielder. And then Arteta had to, I don't know what the thought process was, but it was all built around that diamond. And like, here's the thing is, I think Rice is a great player, and like, he's somebody that I think is a successful signing for us, and I still would buy him, but I would have been also okay with us not spending 100 million on him and just spending that on the left center mid and spending less, and then taking the 65 million and whatever you didn't spend on Rice and putting that for a striker and a winger or whatever. There was a lot of money to play with in different ways that we could have utilized it. Because you also have to remember that before this last season, we all knew that Partey's fitness was not up to scratch. And so you had Jorginho, who we decided to keep for multiple seasons. We had Thomas Partey, who we didn't trust. And then they wanted to buy Declan Rice. So the midfield is imbalanced. They needed like just an 8. They couldn't identify one. They didn't bring in somebody that could replace Xhaka. And then they were playing Havertz there. So it's just like, yeah, it's just that window was a total misfire. And you can think players are good and know that you probably could have spent the money differently. And, when you have 200 million that you spent and you didn't get that much better, I said we got different, we didn't get better, then you have to look at how you spent it. And you could make an argument for not buying Rice and do something different. I accept people who say that. You could have, my main thing would have been not spending 65 million on Havertz. I think that that was the biggest mistake that we could have made. You could even make an argument to have kept Ramsdale for an additional season and bought, Raya the next summer and use that 30 million that we loaned for him on something else, so it just wasn't spent in the way, especially because we didn't see the 40 million for Timber either. It was just felt like we just didn't get any better. It was just like, yeah. So it is alarming. But I think the main issue is that we didn't get a single attacker and we had so much money to do so. And when you look at the fact that we could have got Kudus for 40 million, a player that continuously can have multiple bad games, but then somehow just shows up against us. I hate that we have players like that in the league that we just, because we didn't get them, they show up against us every single time. But you could have gotten him. You could have got Javi Simmons on a loan. There's tons of things that you could have done, but you chose not to do anything. And that is unforgivable, whether it was because Havertz was never the answer. So, yeah, I'm not surprised we didn't get so much better. Conrad, thank you so much for your super chat. I already read this one. But yeah, we're not going to spend the 200 million. We're going to have to sell to buy. It's going to be all those types of things. And, that's why we need a good DOF that can identify how to maneuver people around, how to get the most fees for people. And unfortunately, in order to do what we want to do, I do think Arsenal will probably maybe be open to selling players that we shouldn't be open to selling. At this stage, I don't think that we're in a position to just sell certain players, but we'll need to because Jesus is injured. But remember, people scoffed at me when I said that we should have sold Jesus last summer. It was so obvious that we needed to sell him at that point because he had missed like almost the entire season in and out with injuries and didn't look like himself. We should have sold him for 30 whatever million, 40 and got his wages off the books. But now look at where we are. He tore his ACL and now it's impossible. So if we want to get somebody in, we might need to sell like a Martinelli or somebody like that. And despite me not loving his form, I just don't think we're in a better position where if we get in Nico Williams and sell Martinelli, we're in the same position because if Nico Williams gets injured, then what? So yeah, it's crazy. Jordan says, I've given up on the project until the Cronkies leave. We will always be a poorly run laughingstock of a club. I'll never be deceived again. Yeah, I don't know how old you are, but this might be your first failed project. I've seen at least 3 go up in dumpster fire since we've been at the Emirates. So yeah, this one hurts more, but yeah, this doesn't feel as bad as the 2008 to the 2010 one because that team was better than this one. That team was better than this one. And it went up in flames because we just wouldn't be serious and we allowed Robin Van Persie and Cesc and Nasri to leave, which all 3 of those players walk into this team. Like, they're infinitely better players than what we have now. Yeah, it's crazy. Here to there says, what proper DOF would come here to be Arteta's rubber stamp? I don't know. Kimberly says, Havertz signing will always bite us in the bum. Boy says, you said 20 points. It really might be 20 points, bro. You guys are talking to each other. Theo says, I don't think we could afford to let Rice go to City. I don't even know if it's just about letting him go to City. I just think that, like, you had to have a clear plan. Like, it had to be in this scenario, it was never going to be Partey, Rice, and Odegaard. It just was never going to be that. I know we tried to convince ourselves that that was the midfield that was going to work well, but I actually think Rice's best moments and Partey's some of his better, like Rice's best moments have never come with Partey, despite some of Partey's best moments this season coming with Rice. And I think it's because Rice has to sacrifice what he does best. And as long as Partey has somebody there that can kind of stay near him and win the ball, he can kind of do his job. But Rice just, it's just a really miss of everything that he does well. So it was either going to be Rice at the 6, and then you buy an 8 that's an all-arounder that can do kind of everything, that can get forward, that can get back, and do those types of things. Or it was going to be Partey, and then you get somebody that just replaces Xhaka. Like, it could never have been the 2 of them in midfield together. It doesn't work. Not as well as I think people think it's going to, especially when it affects Odegaard. So, yeah, Rice there needed to be, for a club that went into this whole thing about how we had a 180-page binder on Rice and we gave him a clear vision of what his role was going to be at Arsenal, and we knew exactly how we were going to utilize him for this to be how we utilize a player like him, I just have to think that, you know, this will affect our ability to attract, you know, top players again, because they'll look at it and they'll be like, I just know that Rice talks to his family about this and is like, I'm just better in the 6. I know that he probably enjoys going forward at times, but there's just no way with the season that he's had that he likes what he's doing. Like, there's just no way, because it looks awkward, it looks clunky, and he always looks so much more assured when he's playing at the 6 for us. So, yeah, we just needed to double down, you know, but we're always like very half-assed with everything. It's like we tried the diamond, it didn't work. Partey got injured, we switched everything around, and then now it's like, okay, so we're gonna kind of go with this. There was never a world where a midfield of Rice and Havertz and Odegaard was gonna make sense. It was awful. It didn't work. And every iteration of the midfield since has really missed just a simple, like like a McAllister type, a Bruno Guimaraes type, just somebody that could offer midfielding qualification, like, you know, but Arteta's always going for somebody that doesn't create football, meaning somebody that can't get the ball and create the action with their own brain. You know, it's always somebody that needs the map printed out for them very clearly, where they know where the next pass is going to be. God forbid they're in a position where things are not super clear. They can't dribble, you know, through, they can't carry the ball, they can't find a pass, you know, they're just very like Marino and Kai Havertz both need that map. You know, we just need another midfielder in there. It's crazy. Name block says, not we. Mikel unprepared, plays everyone out of position. Reinders, you know, I don't know if we've spoken about him um, a lot, but Reinders would be a good option for that position. I just know we would never put the money down. Reinders does all the things that you need a midfielder to do. And it's just so crazy how we've avoided being able to buy 8s. You know, we've made Odegaard, who is a 10, into an 8. We're making Declan from a 6 into an 8. You try to make Havertz positionless into an 8. Just buy a fucking 8. Just buy a fucking 8 that knows what the fuck to do in midfield. That would just make our lives so much easier. But we need to do the attack. So I don't know. I don't know. Vic says the manager gaslighted the entire fan base with his "don't be satisfied" speech at the end of last season. Proper con man. Boy says Rice knows he's not good in the final third. That's not his thing. You can see it when he's in possession in that area. Exactly. It just doesn't work. Reinders keepers. I like that. Jordan says Arteta might be the football equivalent of Hitler. Oh my gosh, that's nice. Says it's kind of crazy. We could have gone to Lyon and got Bruno G and Paquetá for 100 million. Abdillo says it's so annoying how we can all see it, but Arteta can't. What do you think is his rationale? If you had to think, why is he doing it? I think it goes back to what somebody was saying earlier, that he, after the 2022-2023 season, he had like severe, actually probably throughout the entire season, he had like very bad, what is it called? Where you don't think you're supposed to be where you're at. Somebody said it already, but basically like imposter syndrome. And when we lost the season, and we did it in a very pathetic way, he ripped it up and changed everything because he didn't trust himself anymore. He probably overthought it. Everything about Mikel is about overthinking. It's too much in his brain, not enough in what's right. You know, I think as a manager, a lot of times it's just what feels right in your gut at the time. And I don't think he's a gut guy. I think he's very much so an overthinker. He stews in his thoughts and he unpicks everything and overthinks it. And so I think that's the rationale for why he changed things. And then once you make a decision and you convince people around you that don't believe that that's the right thing to do, then you have to double down on it. And that's essentially what happened. He had to convince people to bring in Havertz. He had to convince the entire transfer team that had major concerns about whether or not this was the right person to replace Granit Xhaka, to spend 65 million on a player that had flopped in England already at a rival. And so now he's stuck in the spiral of trying to make that work, because I think if you do something like that and then you admit that you made a mistake, I think people lose trust in you and lose faith. So he's just doubling down on it to make it seem like this was always the plan. It was always the plan that we were going to play him in multiple positions. It was always the plan that it was going to be this. And he's so busy trying to make Kai Havertz work for the sake of his ego rather than anything else. And so I think why he switched things up is pretty clear to see. He was traumatized by the way that season ended, when he was probably, I won't say that he was probably upset, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mikel was a little bit annoyed that we were as good as we were in that season. I think he wanted another season of fighting for top four, and we ended up in a title race, and it made everything go, all the stuff about slow and steady went out the window, and we had to win now. And it blew up all of his plans, and he just never recovered from it. He bought Havertz for whatever reason, and now he's committed to it. So, but yeah, the Havertz thing, all this off the ball stuff and all of that, our problem wasn't off the ball in that season. I just think it was, there was more of a mentality thing in that season that we didn't win the league. I don't necessarily feel like, because we were still scoring goals. But as soon as Saliba got injured, our confidence was shaken. And to me, that's a mentality thing, because if the Invincibles had lost Sol Campbell and they had to play with Seagon back there for the last 10 games of the season, they still would have won the league. They still would have won the league. That is a thing. Like, that is a mental thing. But for that team, just having that person out, it just killed them. It just killed them off. So, and that comes from the manager, because he probably started panicking. So, yeah. Name Block says exactly. He's obsessed with Havertz. Here to There says, couldn't put it better, Jess. You summed up the last 2 years perfectly. Abdilo says, the phases, he said, we were ahead of schedule. You reminded me exactly, like when you're preparing for a season of fighting for top four again, and then you end up 8 points ahead in a title race ahead of City, a team that you are hyper fixated on because you left them. Like, when you're so close to a team that's so successful, I think you don't have like that, young and dumb thing. When you don't know anything about a situation, maybe you can be a little naive to it, which can be good for you. If you don't know, like, firsthand about something, you can kind of go into it blindly and naive. Arteta can't go into a title race against City naive. He can't go into it without trepidation, because he was too close to the situation. So he's hyper focused on City. He was hyper focused on City, and losing to City after being so far ahead when he was meant to just be fighting for top four, it just rattled him. It just rattled him. And as much as I felt like he set us up for failure by trusting Rob Holding and not trusting like a Kivior, or trying a young player in that position or something like that, because Rob Holding can barely hold down a job now. I think he still should have been able to keep the players and the team in a confident enough position to relax and just beat West Ham, beat Southampton, beat Liverpool away from home, and beat Brighton or whoever the fuck it was, and win the league. But he couldn't. Like, it's crazy. Big says, I don't want this manager to utter the following words. If he's our manager next season, process, profile, and progress, PR words. The process and all that kind of stuff is just, that's done. We're in win now. So we don't really need to be talking about processes and stuff. It's okay. Kimberly says, well, 29 will be his downfall. Yeah, man. I don't get the Kai Havertz thing. Just fail fast. I think it'd be easier if we just admitted it was a mistake and try to move them on. Most teams would have done that. Most good teams that make a mistake, they don't double down on it for 3-4 seasons. They just, first they go to the bench, they replace them, put that person on the bench, and then slowly just move them out like they just never existed. And instead, we just try to make it work. I don't understand why we do that. Fail fast. It didn't work. Get rid, but people would rather sell other players that have actually been good for us instead of just getting rid of him. It's just crazy. I would sell Kai Havertz tomorrow if I could. Boy says the board will hire Thierry, buy out his TV contract or something absurd like that. That would be a mistake as well. Dark says, "Hi, I'm Arteta in, but if I'm not trolling or care about you, I would say get him completely out." Abdilo says, you sound defeated, Jess. I turned it off halftime when Calafiori came off. Slowly, I'm losing interest in this team and manager. Never felt this under Emery. Maybe 5+ years. It's stale. I just think, even though I didn't feel like this under Emery, I felt like this at the back end of Arsene. Like I said, I was checking the scores and seeing if we won, and if it looked like it was a decent game, I would rewatch it. If not, I would just move on with my life because I was like, this is not the Arsenal that I know. Like they're so hard to watch, and we were still playing better football then than we are now, by the way. But under Emery, it was still fresh, and it was post Arsene, so there was like still that freshness, and like it only got bad with Emery after Baku because we were pretty much in and around the top 4 the entire time in his first season, and it was the first season, and then we went to Baku, and then it all went to shit from there, and then he really struggled in the second season, and he was gone. So it was quick. Under Mikel, this has been 5 years, and you think missed out on top 4 and 3 failed title races. That's going to be 4 seasons in a row where we missed out on our targets. You're tired. You're fatigued. You're tired, and we haven't watched good football the entire time either. The first couple of years, the football was terrible as well, and we kind of went back to that, the slow sideways and backward passing, not a lot of shots created, not a lot of goals. That's kind of where we're back to like now with him. So you're just tired. It happens. Imagine being a player, and actually having to go out on the pitch, and pretend you still have something to fight for after 3 failed seasons, of like not meeting your targets, Imagine being them. If I was a player, I'd be like, fuck. Jordan says, Jess, we're on the verge of getting full respect from rival City and Liverpool fans. We're watching us as a serious team heading into the season, but now they realize we are fugazi. Yeah, I mean, I'm less concerned about what fans think from other teams. I'm more concerned about what the club thinks, because the club is the most important. If they think that we're still on this trajectory to greatness, then that scares me. I think that they need to rethink everything that's happened in the last maybe 2-3 years and try to understand how we got from where we were at the end of the 2022-23 season to where we've been now. Because even then, there were questions around like, we tried to zhuzh it up and say, well, we missed out on the title, but it was our first title race and all that kind of stuff, young team. But there was really no excuses for still going out of domestic cups early, for not being able to use your bench, to only being able to use 12 players and count on 12 players. We're still kind of in that same position now where he doesn't trust a lot of his bench. Why is it that we were so bad in the Europa League? Questions like that. I remember questioning the Europa League stuff, and I got absolutely murdered. And it wasn't until we went out to Sporting where people told the truth of why, like, we look terrible in the Europa League, and it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't be walking it, but the fact that we couldn't replicate our football in multiple competitions was alarming to me, because I'm like, we should just play the same no matter what. We may not win every single game, but we look like a completely different team in cup competitions. And to me, that all comes down to the fact that it's do or die. Cup competitions mean if you don't win, you go out, and yeah. Here to there says the Cronkies need to get the alignment with Saka and Saliba. They leave. The project is done. Yeah, they may not understand that, but if those two leave, we'll never be able to replace them. So they might as well try to get it right while they have them. Name block says because Mikel unprepared, panicked, lack of experience. Here to there, I talked that one already. Anon says Arteta's record in Europe is horrendous. It really is. Like, and people just act like it's normal. And I'm like, I mean, as bad as Emery was, he got us to a final of the Europa League. And that's not to like, I would not keep Emery now, but Arteta has not gotten his team to a final yet in any cup competition. And, Emery finished like what 1 point outside of the top four or some shit like that. Arteta's only really made us into a top four team. Like it's not really like there's a difference between Emery and Arteta, mostly because Arteta's had more time. But the fact that we haven't really achieved much more than what we achieved with Emery should be alarming to people. You know, Emery played terrible football. The difference was that we, conceded a lot of shots and stuff like that. But at least Aubameyang was playing well. Shit, at least Aubameyang was scoring goals. It's just a different type of stank. It's like the difference between the way garbage stinks and I don't know somebody's Frito feet. It's all the same stink. It's just a different type of stink. It's just a different type. Pixel says, I disagree. Emery never won with Arsenal any trophy, but Mikel's won something. The difference, though, Pixel, is that the further we get away from the FA Cup, we have to remember the context around the FA Cup. Is that, yes, Arteta won the FA Cup 100%, but we're so far removed from that it almost is like in 5 years, with so much backing, all you won was an FA Cup. Emery had 1.5 seasons and got to a final. You had 6 months and won a FA Cup with a team that wasn't yours. Ever since you had your own team, we haven't even gotten to a final. So I think, yes, a lot of Arsenal fans will say, yeah, but he won the FA Cup in his first season. And that is true. But the further we get away from that, the less relevant it becomes in conversations around whether or not he's the right guy for us. Because surely you should have gotten to more finals, more semifinals, been more competitive in cup competitions. He is awful in cups. It is set in stone. Arteta is a bad cup manager. Going out to Olympiacos almost sent me to a mental facility. I threw my phone up against the wall and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm cooked. I could not believe that day. Going out to Olympiacos, going out to Villarreal, he's awful. Like he's awful in cup competitions. Nothing you can tell me about it. Kimberly says it wasn't even a squad as well. Foxy says, to me, Arteta the manager is like Arteta the player. Good level, but not going to take you to glory. Thank you. I don't know if I just did I say that earlier? Because I feel like I said that earlier, that the team very much so mimics Arteta. Good, follows the rules, works hard, has a tactical mind, is probably better than you give him credit for, but not good enough to really take you to the level. It very much so mirrors Mikel. Mikel, and he brings in players like him, players that were so grateful to be at Arsenal because that was the top station he was ever going to get to. He never played for his national team. He never really won anything. Arsenal was the closest he was going to get to being on a top side. And he came here and he was so grateful, and he recruits the same types of players. He recruits players that are grateful to be here. That's why he wants the Ollie Watkins, because we would be like his favorite thing. But he's not going to go get no player that believes that he should be at a top team. He's not going to go get nobody like that. He's going to get people that are kind of like him, hardworking, follows what the club wants him to do, is good and solid. But he's not going to go get the top guy. He's not going to get the top guy. He's just not, so it mirrors him. And they all kind of have, Arteta has, I think one of the things that makes it hard for me to warm to Mikel, and it's always made me warm to Mikel, is I don't particularly rate his personality. And I know that this is not important. If he was winning things, I wouldn't care about his personality, but he's so dry and so kind of cold, and he's kind of has energy at times, but almost at the wrong times, and I feel like the players and the club, everything kind of mimics that. It's like when you need to be locked in, you're not locked in. When he's the team is zapped of any sort of life. And no, I don't want them dancing around like Aubameyang and Lacazette were. I don't need that, but they don't have any energy. Big says, to be fair, you can't throw his national team appearances thing into the combo. He was from a generation where David Silva would sometimes be benched. Of course, he would get into the Spain team. No, I'm just saying that. I mean, he didn't play for his national team. I mean, that does go on his CV. You know, it does go on your CV because you didn't play for your national team. Yes, I know that David Silva and freaking Santi Corzola couldn't get a minute. I get that. But he didn't. He never got called up, not once. He tried to switch over to England and it didn't work, you know, so he didn't. He was he was maybe at best we'd call him a Barclays man, you know, a player that was probably underrated, but definitely like 100% a Barclays man, but he was never considered one of the best in the league, you know, he was never that guy, y'all. He was never that guy. Like, let's not try to rewrite history on the guy. Like, he was just a good, solid player. He was like a let's see, who's like stayed at their club for a long time, was kind of average, but kind of like a this might be shading him too hard, like a James Ward-Prowse, like, you know, something like that. Everything is a performance and production with Arteta. It makes me skeptical of him in general. I do not like his personality. I will say that. He doesn't you don't have to like his personality, but he comes across cold and a little forced and like a little dry, you know, and he needs a little so yeah, something about it is I don't warm to him, but it's not imperative that I love the manager's personality. Um I think I was just spoiled with Arsene where he wasn't necessarily the most fun, but he had, like, a very distinct personality and, like, a thing around him where you just knew he was, like, the smartest in the room. He had that. Boy says, if we never left Highbury, we would have been able to we would have been able to build a new stadium with the new TV money to tide us over. Boy says Arteta is spicy moist. I mean, Moisey has a little bit more personality than he does, and he's really dry too. The thing about Moisey is he doesn't pretend to be anything he's not, and he's just incredibly like he's a serious guy, but he gives off like very honest vibes. Arteta gives off a little bit of like a you know when they said that Arteta was kind of like a kiss ass as an Arsenal player, like he would do anything to be the favorite. That's what he gives off. Karubel says he is very off-putting. I hate looking at his press conferences more than 5 minutes or 5 seconds. It would be nice to have a manager that reflects the value of the club. Arteta's, I don't know. But then also when it's kind of like in a relationship, you've been with somebody for a long time and they're not really living up to your standards, you start to get the ick. And I feel like that's where I am with Mikel, is I have the ick. So like everything he does is like, oh my gosh. But I never really hung on his every word either. So yeah, people would be like, do you hear what he said in the press conference? And I'm like, I don't listen to his damn press conferences. No, you know? Boy says Arteta is like some unholy mix of Wenger, Moyes, and Pep. Well, he took the wrong things from each one. He took the wrong things from each one of those managers. He didn't take the attacking from Wenger, but he took the stubbornness. He didn't take the stuff from Pep where like they play good football or like, you know, he didn't take any of that kind of stuff or, you know, buying the world-class talent because you know Pep cannot do anything without world-class talent. He didn't take that. And from Moyes, he took like maybe he took the most things from Moyes, but it's more like the defensive stuff. I don't know because Moyes at least you know he won a conference league, but I don't know. I think Wenger the thing that he took from Wenger was the stubbornness and the unwillingness to change things when they're not right. He took that from him, and he didn't take the thing from Pep where he buys the most talented player that he can find. He's never bought a KDB, he's never bought a Holland, he's never bought any types of players like that, you know. So I think he took maybe the overthinking from Pep, you know. He didn't take any of the good shit. You know, take the great attacking play from Arsene. You know, take the I want world-class players in my team thing from Pep. You know, take those things. Why do you take the bad things, man? But he took the most shit from Moyes, that's for sure. In the first 10 years of Wenger in charge, every time he was at a press conference, I stopped whatever I was doing. These days, I'm so not interested. Here to there says, sadly, even Moyes, Everton are playing more exciting ball than us now. Howard says, football is actually kind of dead nowadays. I can't lie, it's boring and predictable. I think that's a bigger conversation for another day because I think anybody that's been watching football for at least 20 years can agree that the football is just not, it's not hitting the same. Um, it's this just less, I mean, everybody talks about it. There's less creativity, there's less freedom. Everybody plays like a system, all those types of things. So, um, yeah, football goes in cycles, and you have seen that there are some managers that are just playing very simplistic, normal football. And so you know that we're coming out of the pep stage and we're going back, and it'll come back, but football is very cyclical. It'll come back. It's not going to stay like this forever. As Pep fades, which he will fade, this era will end. But when you see teams like Nottingham Forest, you see teams like Fulham, you see teams like Bournemouth, you see teams like Liverpool under Slot. They don't play inverted here, center back set at fullback, all this nonsense. They just play simple. Big number nines are coming back, so the false nine is dead again. Football is cyclical. I think we'll go back to more individual and propping up your attacking players and less of this system, everybody do everything thing. And that'll, if Arteta doesn't adapt, he'll get left behind because the style that Pep and him do is going down. So Brandtail says Roy Keane says top managers are gamblers. We need to gamble on winning instead of predictable draws. But that's what Arteta would rather, lose, or rather draw than lose. And that's pretty clear at this point. He's too safe and too scared. And when he was gambling, he lost, and he lost one time, and he's never recovered. And so he doesn't trust himself. He doesn't trust his team. And that's the problem. Here to there says, all the while, Don Carlo continues to stack trophies by catering to his players' strengths, and Slot is similar. No need to overcomplicate it. The one thing that's so funny is that there's an alternative universe where Ancelotti was the Arsenal manager. I personally was like shocked that we hired Arteta, because Ancelotti and Arteta were both available. Arteta is an Everton legend, and we're Arsenal, and they ended up with Ancelotti. You know how embarrassing that is to see that Everton at one point had more ambition than we did, and Ancelotti was half doing the job, was sitting there with a cup of tea in his hand, barely paying attention. And Everton were actually playing decent back then because he had Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring goals. He had James Rodriguez there. Do you guys remember this? Like, I remember this so well. And they were playing decent, and they were actually going towards, like, the Richarlison was playing okay too. And they were actually moving towards like the European spots. And I just remember Ancelotti was just standing there on the sideline, just collecting the paycheck, barely doing anything. And I mean, he was on the first thing smoking, but there could have been a situation where we had him and they didn't. And that's the situation that we should have been in. Sorry. And I know that the Real Madrid position came up, but, of course he just wanted to leave Everton. It was below him. Like, it was way below him. But there's just never a situation where we should have not ended up with Carlo Ancelotti, but that's just me. Do you guys remember that? I hope you guys do remember that, because I remember they had James Rodriguez, they had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they had Richarlison, and there was somebody else there too that was playing decent at the time, and they were playing good. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I was like, it's just Carlo just knows how to make them play. And I'm pretty sure that we dropped points to them at home. Or no, we beat them 2-0, and Aubameyang scored like 2 goals or something, but we played shit. And I was just like, here we go with this Arteta guy. Karubal says, yeah, Everton was first for like 2 months. It was fucking crazy. It was fucking crazy. Cabello says, hey, Jess, West Ham didn't have a clean sheet before playing us since December. That tells you everything you need to about our front line. West Ham have not played an easier game this season than that. They had not played well at all under Potter until that. That was the best game that they played under him. And if you're having a bad run of games, just wait for Arsenal, because you will get something from that game. Because I think every team that's been in a bad run of form has met us and had got something. So yeah, it's crazy. Burmy says the project is over. Who knows if Saka, Nelly, or even Havertz will regain their pre-injury form. I feel the worst for Saka, because this looked like it was going to be a record-breaking season for him. But that's how karma works. Like, karma is very much so like a very mean bitch. Like, karma it holds no prisoners. Like, karma very much so is like a very real thing. And I think we have always like that. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We don't buy anybody. We get massive injuries to key players in one position. That's how it works for us. I don't know. Saliba got injured and Tomiyasu got injured the very, like, in the same game or the next game. So I don't know who at Arsenal needs to hear this, but when you make stupid decisions, you get stupid prizes, So play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. And the prize that we've gotten is all of our attackers are injured at once after you had multiple windows, not just the 2 windows that just went past, but the last summer window to improve, and you didn't do it. So this is what you get. If Saka it comes back looking like shit, I will never forgive them. I will never forgive them. We'll have ruined this young player's career because you ran him into the ground and you use him like a bar of soap. I will never forgive them if Saka doesn't come back the same. And this is why we need like 3 attackers in the summer, because they will bank on them coming back normal. But what's the reality, you guys? Knowing Arsenal and how our injuries go. Look at Jesus. He came back and he never looked the same. Martinelli got injured against Brighton after Caicedo flew through his ankle, and he's never looked the same. So what's the likelihood of all 3 of them coming back looking normal? But Arsenal will bank on that. They'll go out there and maybe get one attacker, versatile attacker that can do multiple positions, and then we'll be in the same fuck-ass position we're in right now. And then these players will be looking like shit. If Saka does not come back and look like a world-class player, I will never forgive them. I will never forgive them, because this was always in the post. We've been speaking about it for years, about how he's been overused, how he's been going in the direction of players that played too much in their younger years, and by the time they were 26, they couldn't even walk, and we were doing that to our best and brightest. I will never forgive them. I will never forgive them. I'm being so real, you guys. I'm being so real. I will never forgive them if Saka comes back and he looks like shit. I'll never forgive them. Jordan says ESR hasn't been injured for Fulham this season, by the way. He's had a little knock here and there, but I get what you're saying. He's been available more than he's been out. Which is crazy. The likelihood of all 3 of them coming back and being okay, you have to think about it too. The 3 of them, and in particular Havertz and Saka, have played a shit ton of minutes since they were really young. Havertz is 24, 25, and he played a lot for Leverkusen, he played a lot for Chelsea, and he's playing a lot for us and a lot for Germany. So he might be crocked. Dark says, Jess, if he cared about Saka, he wouldn't be back this season. VVD rested till next season. He shouldn't play a lick. There's no reason to play him now. There's nothing to play for, so just leave him there to take a long layoff. Him, Havertz is out for the rest of the season. These players but we shouldn't bank on them being the players that they were at their best. We should assume that they'll come back at their worst and then do things based on that. We never do things based on the worst case scenario. They should have said, worst case scenario, we have the worst injuries that we've ever had. How should we build the squad based on worst case scenario? We build our squad based on the best case scenario. No one's going to get injured. Everybody's going to score 20 goals. Everybody's going to have 15 million assists, and it's going to be great. We never build the squad based on the worst case scenario. We need to build on the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, Saka, Martinelli, and Havertz come back and they don't look the same. So what does that mean? You need 3 attackers in the summer. 3. Kirble says, Jess, how long do you give this manager? If he doesn't win anything this season, I would want him to be replaced in the summer. I said at the beginning of the season, give him a pass last season because we started off slowly. But even last season, I was like, him not getting us to any finals, to the league the way that it was, like, no. The beginning of last season was atrocious, so yeah. If he doesn't win anything this season, which looks likely, I'd prefer we move him on. I'm very much so like I said, like at this stage, it's just like it's so much easier to change the manager than anything else. And I almost feel like the players need a different voice. They need, like, Arne Slot is not like a better manager than Klopp. I know people are stupid and they'll say like, oh, Arne Slot just is better than Klopp. He's not. Klopp was a world-class manager, one of the best managers we've seen in our lifetimes. Went up against the best City side. We didn't even go up against the best City sides. We didn't. We went up against like the lower versions, the version like, and they were going up against them and getting like 99 points. They won Champions League, so Klopp won the league in another league too. So Klopp is a better manager than Arne Slot until we know otherwise. But I don't know, even Arne Slot wasn't a manager that anybody would have really wanted, because he wasn't rated. When you get Klopp and you have Klopp and you need to replace him, you would think bigger names. They're thinking that Xabi Alonso and names like that. They got a guy from the Eredivisie, and he's just given them a new breath, like fresh air, like fresh new vision, fresh new. Sometimes you just need fresh. You just need new. You hear the same voice over and over again. You start to get like a little weary. You start to not listen as much. You start not to believe as much, especially when this guy's been telling you this shit for 5 years, so sometimes you just need something new. And so I don't even think it'll take needing to go get Don Carlo, which I would love Don Carlo, but just go get somebody that plays better attacking football, has managed before, knows how to work with a top DOF, and has actually won at least something in their life, and move from there. I don't understand why everybody's acting like it needs to be, yeah, but we shouldn't get rid of Arteta if we can't go get a Pep. Come on. And even if, like if you're in a relationship or something and it's not working out, the worst thing you can do is just stay in that relationship because you're so afraid of what the unknown is. Staying in a relationship that's not working because you're not sure of the unknown is a bad decision. I wouldn't suggest it for a friend or anybody that I loved, and I'm not going to suggest it on my football team. I'd rather us bring in somebody new, fail fast if it doesn't work, and start again, and hire and sack until we find the right guy, instead of sticking with somebody that's probably not the right guy, is not the right guy, and pretending like it's just better than the other side, but whatever. Boy says FSG, all the Liverpool fans complain about them. Here to there says a Thomas Frank type would do nice things with our talent. I love Thomas Frank. But I'm not sure that, like I said, somebody that plays good football, he kind of fits that. Somebody that has worked with a top DOF before, not sure if I would say, but maybe he does play well with others. And then somebody who's kind of won something in the past, I don't think he's ever done that. So he wouldn't fit the criteria for that. But I love Thomas Frank, and I think he should get a better job in the Prem. Foxy says Slot arrived at the perfect club at the perfect time. He's done brilliant, but the rest of Prem made it easy for him this season. Let's see what happens if Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Lee, Areola, Nagelsmann, Alonso would be great choices. I really like Areola a lot. I think he'd be a great option for Newcastle. My fear is that he'll end up at like Spurs, because he's definitely, I think, a top 4 manager or a Champions League level manager. Now, I've seen Areola be linked with the job at Leverkusen when Xabi Alonso leaves, and I'm like, that's the perfect place for him to land. Now, that is perfect. Areola at Bayer Leverkusen when Xabi Alonso goes to Real Madrid is the perfect succession plan for everyone. I think Real Madrid and Xabi Alonso makes a lot of sense, and Areola going to Bayer Leverkusen makes a lot of sense. He'll have a lot of attacking talent. He'll have a deep squad. He'll have a team that's won before. It's almost like Klopp setting, you know, slot up, you know, and Areola has shown in a very short amount of time that he's good, you know. So if he doesn't, I would prefer him not to stay in the Prem. I think he's too good to stay in the Prem and not be at Arsenal, you know, because he's dangerous. He's a really good coach. Ayushi says, I agree. It's about change. The 5 years is a long time as a manager. Arsenal don't need a better manager. Just change for a couple years to win something. Then you get the target, the next prodigy. Mata says, it's annoying how much we play down our level to the team in front of us. We always do it. Whatever the level of the team is, we play to their level. Brent says, how much cash will have to be spent to sack the third highest manager in the world? I don't know. Pixel says, go get Bellingham. We need big players. Here to There says, yes, Areola is a proper manager on the rise. Jordan says Real Madrid are monitoring Areola just. They rate him highly in Spain, but he won't get the job over Xabi Alonso. That's the thing. I think it's pretty set in stone that Xabi Alonso is going to get the job, and they'll move on Carlo Ancelotti. So if that's the case, then Areola going to Bayer Leverkusen makes a lot of sense. I can see them monitoring both, but the likelihood is that a team like Real Madrid is going to hire somebody that they've seen. One, they have somebody that's played at their club before, and then so they understand what it means. And then they have somebody that's won things before, even in another league. I don't think that they would switch up on Xabi Alonso to get Areola, despite how good he's doing in the Prem. I think the way that I said it before is the right way that it should go. Areola is good enough to kill Kompany off. He's good enough to kill Kompany off. He is. That bald head is not that good of a manager. And I think Areola could do some damage to Vincent Kompany. I could see it. He's got it. Vic says Xabi Alonso was able to go unbeaten. He's Madrid bound. Brandtail says UCL trophy next season, forget the league. Inzaghi is the one. I'd say screw the league. The trophy we should go for is UCL. We don't have enough to do anything in the UCL. The UCL arguably is a much more difficult situation for us now than the Prem, because the UCL, if you guys watch the games, it's not about systems, it's about individual quality. In this UCL, your individual quality has to show. And I think that's why we're so bad in Europe, is because our individual quality doesn't show, because we play the stiffest football in Europe. And so every time I watch a UCL tie, all I see is individual moment. Yes, the systems are there, but it's individual moment of brilliance, individual moment here. So-and-so doing this. The players are really the shining light. They'll talk about the thing that Dembele did. They'll talk about the thing that Rafinha did. They'll talk about the thing that Harry Kane did. Individual moments of brilliance. Talk about the thing Musiala did. It's very rare that you're talking about something that an Arsenal player did, because usually we don't do anything. It's like O'Malley said, it's all about moments. And we don't create moments at all. Boy says, are the players not allowed to break the system at all? I mean, I don't know that, but I would say that based on what we've seen, I don't think that they're the types of players. And that's the thing, is you recruit players that won't break the system. If you're a control freak like Mikel is a control freak. He doesn't want people that are going to fall out of line, people that are going to question anything. And so he brings in players that I don't think will, his captain is somebody that we would have never chosen for captain. And I love Odegaard down, but we would never choose him. Arteta is all about keeping order, keeping the ducks in a row. And so he's not like, I just think that the players, even if they did, I actually just cannot see them doing it, because they're all nice boys that want to do what the manager is saying. And that's why they're at Arsenal. you know? O'Malley says Saka, Wanyeri, MLS, and Calafiori are the only Mavericks we have in this team, and two of those are fucking children, and they'll be like the longer that they stay, the longer that they'll be Arteta-fied. Wilma says, "Do you actually believe Arsenal when they say they couldn't get a striker who's the right fit in January? I mean, look at Marmoush at City." Um, is not that I don't think that they could find. I think they couldn't find someone who um I think that they just always have their ideal player in their mind, and then so that they can't get them in January, which if they couldn't get them in the summer, they were never going to get them in January because they're not going to overspend. I feel like that's more what it was, is we're not willing to do what's necessary to get the player that we really want. So, and then the players that we're not quite sure on, we're not going to go get because we're so afraid that it'll go wrong. So we have to get the perfect player. They don't trust their recruitment enough to go down the list of the next player, the next player, and the next player because they're afraid it's going to go left. And that could be the quality of the backup options is not great because our DOF is shit, or it could be that they just don't trust those options because they're so afraid to make a Pepe mistake or, to bring in a player that we're not going to be able to sell later. So they make no decisions. They just stick with what they have. The fact that we always are sticking with what we have and we trust what we have, I think is more based on lack of trust. Lack of trust that things will work out, lack of trust in the backup options because they need the perfect player. And often the perfect player has to be somebody that's played in the league before, that they've seen perform, because they don't trust their own eye tests. They don't trust their own recruitment. They need somebody else to develop that player and then bring them in. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. Anon says we should not have let Nketiah go before signing someone else. Now, I don't know if I'll go that far because Nketiah, as much as we could use a body, I could not watch Nketiah walk around because he came off the bench. I cannot watch Nketiah foul nonstop. When we're trying to chase a goal, I'm not going to watch Nketiah. I'm just not going to watch Nketiah. So I'm sorry. Brand Trail says Arteta and the board didn't agree on signing this season. That's why nothing happened. Keto says it's crazy. This is a Pepe. This is Pepe was a mistake. I'm cool with making. At least they tried. It's so much worse than not getting anybody. I mean, you can say that now, I think, far away, and the fact that we haven't bought anybody that you would take Pepe. I just think, or you'll be okay with buying big and maybe making a mistake. But I think I would just prefer us to have a well-oiled machine of football people up front that can identify talent and get it to us. I feel like that's kind of where I'm at. You okay? These dogs are mad at me. They're so mad. They're so mad. Boy says, seriously, now we see players get Arteta-fied. We've seen, I wasn't like, that's the only way that I can describe it, because it's a very specific thing that players come in and they have, maybe they have a little bit of something, and then after a while, the joy is sucked from them and they don't smile anymore and they don't take on their man anymore. They don't play with joy or freedom. We can all say that Martinelli maybe was never as good as we thought he was going to be, or maybe he just plateaued or whatever. But the Martinelli we watch now is nothing like the Martinelli that came here and put on the number 35. It's not. It's just not. Emil was Arteta-fied as well. Like, he got to the point where there was a game where I think it was in a cup, and Emil came on and everybody was excited for him to come on because he had been out for a while, and he played left 8. And I swear to you that he wall passed it back 3 or 4 times. Emil's game is get it and dribble forward and carry the ball. Arteta had him wall passing backwards for 20 minutes, and he never gained that Emil thing back until he went to Fulham. I don't listen. You guys may say that I'm just talking out of my ass, and that's fine, you know. But I feel like players get Arteta-fied, and the joy like leeches from their eyes. They stop taking on their man. They're not confident. They don't take shots anymore. They're just like sideways, sideways. Okay, get a corner. You know, instead of taking my man on or trying to do something interesting, get the corner instead because Arteta wants corners. You know, pass it to somebody that's less likely to score than me. I'm Trossard. Instead of me taking the shot, let me pass it back to the left back instead. Like, it's just, of course, like, y'all see it. Y'all see it. Even like Saka, like, he's not, since that, what was the season that we played, and we played that really, that game where we scored those 3 goals and Saka scored, was it Saka, Martinelli, and Odegaard scored? I think it was the year that we wore red socks. So maybe the year that we finished outside of the top 4. I think it might have been that year. But we played like Watford or some team like that. And we went and we smashed 3 goals in their face. And Saka was dropping the shoulder and letting the ball roll and nutmegging people and shit. You don't see him doing that on a regular basis anymore. You don't see that. Martinelli smashed the ball from outside the box. You don't see that shit anymore. You would be surprised if if anybody took a shot from outside the box. You know, it's yeah. No, this is the funniest comment. We need a surviving Arteta documentary. Bruh, that's so funny. Imagine Emil and like Reese sitting up there talking about how we just weren't allowed to take our man on, you know. We just had to pass it sideways. Oh my god, that's so funny. Blaze says, "Hey Jess, how you doing? It's been a long time. I haven't been seeing you do a live stream on YouTube." I was saying to them that when I'm stressed out about work, I really can't do anything. Like, I'm very like hyper focused on like trying to, one of my freelance gigs have ended kind of unexpectedly. So now it's like me trying to fight or flight my way to get new jobs. And it's really stressful when you have a house and stuff and life. So yeah, it's just been hard for me to like get in front of the camera because I'm really stressed out about that. But Diluted convinced me to do this live stream. So yeah, and I'm having fun. RD Beat says, under Emery, I thought Nelly was on course to be one of the best players in Europe. Klopp did too. And then Arteta. Karubal says, Martinelli used to be one of the most exciting wingers in world football. Now he is Arteta-fied and he's a scapegoat. Oh my gosh, I can see the Arteta-fied thing is gonna hit numbers, isn't it? But it's just true. Keto says you might be right about the Arteta-fied thing, but the board effed up not investing, so we can't find out for sure. And that's another reason why I want to see these attackers come in. You know, Arteta will stay, but it'll be interesting to see what happens to new attackers. I would love to see. The thing is the more, you know, like players like Fabio and Emil, he can't figure out how to get their creative juices going, but we know they're creative players. He tries to make less creative players more creative. It's strange. Like players that aren't naturally creative, he tries to make them more creative, and players that are naturally creative, he stunts them. And a striker, oh, you know, I don't know, because Aubameyang instantly stopped scoring once Arteta came in, and Lacazette went on the smelliest goal drought for like a year. So if he gets a striker and they just like never score, and then he gets a winger and he kills them, it's fully set in stone. Like he does not know how to platform attackers. He only did it one season, and me and my friends have a theory that he lucked up on it. Like he did not anticipate it working that well. And once he started tinkering with it, he lost it. Like everything that they were doing was built around Zinchenko and Jesus just using their Man City juice to get us going. And also we got Saliba, so we got a world-class player, and we got basically ended up with a new right back because we got Ben White at the right back. So many things changed, and it just melted together and created this like perfect little thing. And Arteta was like, oh shit. And then when he tried to replicate it, he couldn't replicate it again. You know, I don't know. It's just funny. Amelie, Xhaka made it work in 2022, 2023. We went over that. And you need to have a player that's kind of good at everything. And he did defensive work. He dropped in. He protected Partey a little bit. and he was a good passer of the ball. He did creative things. He scored goals. He was combative. He won fouls. He did a lot of things and he was an actual midfielder. So we had 3 midfielders plus some people pinching in. Now you'll be lucky to find the left center mid anywhere near the midfield. You know, Boy says Arteta never had faith in Fabio either, which lets me know that he wasn't an Arteta signing. I think Edu brokered that with the super agent, George Mendes. George Mendes was trying to get some players off the books, and he called Edu, get them in different places. And Edu's like, we need another creative player that's can play in multiple positions. And we ended up spending almost 40 million on Fabio, and you can tell that was not an Arteta signing because you just never tried to make it work with him. And I still stand to this day that the only reason why we can't play with smaller players is because Arteta requires every single player to get into duels. We don't play in ways where some players protect others. You watch teams where they have small players and the bigger players protect the small players, and the small players get the ball and they're free because the other players are doing the dirty work. Everybody does dirty work in this team. So if you don't do dirty work, you're fucked because we protect the attackers and the attackers get to have freedom, and we have these like bullies that kind of protect them like bodyguards. We don't play that way. Everybody has to get into duels. Everybody has to do dirty work. Everybody has to be off the ball because we're going to spend, even against bad teams, we spend a little bit too much time sometimes I hate when we do this. A bad team, a shitty team will walk up to the Emirates and have controlled possession in our half, and we'll just go into our shape. If you don't take the ball off of their fucking toe, if you don't take the ball off their toe right now, seriously, I do not want to see Leicester having controlled possession at the Emirates. But that's why everybody needs to be able to do off the ball, because there's going to be times, where everybody is just sitting there without the ball. Seriously, when I see bad teams having controlled possession at the Emirates, it makes me want to choke. Seriously, I'm just like, can we stop this? Take the ball off of them. Like, what are you doing? Jordan says, I think letting Xhaka go was a big mistake. Xhaka is too intelligent not to unlock a low block. He would have found multiple ways. I think also with Xhaka, Xhaka wanted to go, and that's a harsh reality, is that I think he was tired of, one, we didn't win the league. And I think he was like, well, fuck that shit. We didn't win the league and I'm tired of this shit. The fans, I think he loved Arsenal but hated the fans. And that's a very real thing because the fans are definitely different than the club that they exist in. And I think his family just wanted to go back to Germany. And he had a great opportunity to go play with Xabi Alonso, and he took it. The problem is when we lose players like that, we cannot replace them. That's the biggest problem, and you have to be able to replace these types of players that are foundational. He was not an accessory. He was not a lamp in the house. He was like a couch or a bed. He was foundational to everything. And I think maybe anybody that thought that Havertz was going to be able to do that role, I don't know. And I don't blame Xhaka for going. I just think that the club was unprepared to replace him properly. And this is where you should have went and tried to get like a Bruno Guimaraes and spent whatever you needed to get him, because to me, Bruno Guimaraes is a better player than Xhaka, and he does all those similar things. Good passer of the ball, foundational to his team, can add something into the attack, can also defend well, wins fouls, is smart, is kind of like, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's on the other team, you hate him. That's the type of player that we needed. I know Foxy is like, you would have never got him, but you know what I mean. RD says 100%. Look how he revolutionized Leverkusen. Isaac says we spent 200 million on trying to replace Xhaka and Marino, Rice, and Havertz. Awful stuff. Organ, Kochu, Guimaraes, or Milinkovic-Savic. One of those were supposed to be Xhaka's replacement. Poor recruitment. I, at one point, was like, I thought Orkan Kochu was the guy that was coming to Arsenal and to play in that position. But Bruno Guimaraes was actually the one, and we should have just taken the risk. It was just midfielders and defenders from Ligue 1 do not really do poorly in the Prem. So I don't know why Arteta and Arsenal felt like they needed him to go somewhere else first. Spain, the Bundesliga, places like that, you might want to be a little bit more reluctant, because there's a hit and miss rate in the Prem for those teams, but or those leagues, but the League On, when you get a midfielder or a defender from there, they usually are pretty good, especially like the biggest thing is being able to get their game off in a more physical and fast league. And I didn't see a world where Bruno was going to fail and that we needed to see him develop somewhere else. He was already 23 years old or some shit like that. So he wasn't a child. We had been chasing him since he was in Brazil. It was so dumb. It was so dumb. Like, we should have just got him, man. Richo says, evening, Justin chat. Brandtail says we have soft boy midfielders. They get pushed all the time, e.g. Odegaard. Blaze says, Jess, don't you think Rice play better at DM than left center mid? I think Arteta needs to choose who he wants to play as DM between Partey or Rice. Rice is a better 6, but the way that Arteta plays, he would have to modify his midfield and the balance of the midfield. So, and he doesn't want to do that. So he tries to shoehorn Rice into a position that doesn't work, especially since Kai Havertz failed at left center mid. So it's just a whole mess that we've gotten ourselves into. I think the reality of it is that Partey won't be here past this season, and Rice will. And you've spent so much on him that it is unfathomable that you do not find a way to use him right. So the right thing for Arteta to do is to swallow his pride, put Rice in the 6, and play with another midfielder, like a Bruno G type of midfielder that can kind of do a lot of the work, that takes the burden off of Rice having to be the only pivot in there, and Odegaard from having to be the 8, because I still don't think that that's enough. I'd prefer Rice and another midfielder to do that work and Odegaard push up, but I know some other people would prefer Odegaard to stay in the 8 or somebody else push up. I don't give a fuck. Just get somebody that can actually midfield in there. If you had 3 midfielders in there, boy, would we be good. If we didn't try to make our left center mid into a forward, we'd be so good. We'd be so good. If you had an actual striker that striked, if you had wingers that could create their own chances and could put the ball in the box consistently for a striker, we would be so good. And if we had more than one creator, or we allowed our creator, the only one that we have, to be free and to be free of any other work, boy, we'd be good. But we got too many people doing too much shit. Too much shit. Too many things. Boy says Rice can't be the 8. We're not going to win anything with that. I agree. Brantrell says 2 pivots and a dedicated striker. You have, if you play, like, even if we, like, if you have Rice as the 6 and you just get a normal ass midfielder, somebody like a McAllister, somebody like a Bruno G, somebody like a Reiner, somebody like that just knows how to operate in midfield and make football happen, that would take so much stress off of Odegaard. Odegaard is the only midfielder that we have that produces football, that makes things happen beyond the DMs, and that's not enough, so you need somebody else because Xhaka made football happen, meaning he would pick out the pass, he would unlock the left-hand side, he would have combinations with Zinchenko and Martinelli that didn't require Odegaard to be involved. You need more than what we got going on right now. And with what we're doing right now, I'm not sure that we could just do a number 10 and Odegaard and Rice, but I'd prefer that over what the inevitable that we're going to do, which is Zubimendi, Rice, and Odegaard. We need to add something else. Andrew says, at the end of the day, I just want us to refresh, and that means getting rid of Arteta, and the infrastructure needs changing. I mean, I would change everything up front. I mean, I would get rid of so many people. Jason Ito, goodbye. Arteta, goodbye. Like, everybody that had anything to do with that last summer window, goodbye. But that's not going to happen. So JS says Arteta preaches we will only be out of a title race over his dead body while we are 13 points behind Liverpool. Even if Liverpool lose their next 4 games and Arsenal wins their next 4, still lose. I don't want to hear that whole thing about over my dead body. I don't want to hear that shit. Boy says Odegaard is the only one that can find a killer pass, so teams will just close his forward passing lanes and not Rice's, because Rice can't even execute it anyway in the final third. And Again, I don't feel like for those of you guys who are just started watching, I know this is a long stream, but I owe you guys one, right? Or two. The reason why the Odegaard, the Odegaard thing for me is not about a replacement, it's about a supplement, is that even if you replace him with Wirtz, you still only have one creator. Even when we had Ozil, who was better than anybody else that we could have had in a 10 position, besides like Bergkamp in his prime, he had other creators around him. He had Santi, he had Ramsey, he had Jack. He had multiple creators in the team that supplemented, and he also was on top of them. So there was like always creation. Right now, our wingers don't create, our striker doesn't create. We have Saka is the only one that he gets triple teamed. So then you just have one person because Rice isn't going to create anything. We don't have fullbacks that overlap and create anything. You have one creator in the team, and that is not sufficient for what we're trying to do. So for me, it wouldn't be about replacing Odegaard. It'd be about get more creativity in the starting 11 and throughout the team in general. And that's why I am dogged about the left winger being a creator. I think the number 9 needs to be a goal scorer. I think the left winger needs to be a creator. So Saka and that person can create for the striker. And I would that left center mid, I'd prefer it to be somebody like a Xhaka, like a Bruno G, somebody that can kind of do everything, but also has great creative numbers, meaning their passes through the lines are great. Their progressive passes are good. They can pick a pass out the outside of the box. Like the amount of people that were telling me a couple months ago that Bruno G was not a great passer, can you please come to the front? Because he's consistently one of the best midfielders in the league. And every time I watch him play, he picks nice passes. So what game are we watching? He is a great passer. He's a great passer in the way that Xhaka was a good passer, where it's not the Hollywood passes. You're not going to get Bruno G type passes from them, but they know how to set up their attackers for good moments. You're not going to get that from Rice. And I love Rice, but that's just not his bag. You literally have Odegaard and Odegaard only. And I'm confused on how many people feel like that is sustainable and not an over-reliance on one player to do so much. He needs to help him build up. He's our only creator. Oh, and by the way, you expect him to score goals too, because the attackers aren't doing that. What player is able to do that? KDB is not ever the only creator in his team. He's not the only goal scorer in his team. He doesn't have to go back and get the ball off of the goalkeeper in his team. So why would we expect fucking Odegaard to do it? Because he's not as good as KDB. He's not as good as Ozil. He's not as good as none of them. So I don't know what y'all expect for him. And again, he is playing like shit. So it's not meaning that I think he's playing well. Cabello says, Saliba has Madrid on his mind. Ever since the links, he hasn't been the same. Gabriel is starting to have the look on his face, disappointed and losing trust in the team. That's what happens when you don't hit the mark when you're at the top. When you're at a good position, you have to build on that. We rested on our laurels and we got beat. So I don't know what they expect. This is why I never listen to the idea that we don't have good players in our team and our players are just trash. These players are good. The manager is not living up to the levels to get them over the line. And we also don't supplement them with like world-class elite top level attackers to match what's going on behind them. Because the fact that we look like, it's like like a half and half, like if you're looking at like a horse or something, this half back looking like a unicorn and this half going forward looking like a donkey. Come on, you can't win like that. You can't win like that. Jordan says, just did you hear Arteta's analogy about his daughter crying? He says if his child is crying, there must be context, saying the team is like his. Oh my gosh. I don't listen to him talk because it's just talk. I'm not trying to listen to him. Win. Blaze says, yes, it's true. I remember Cesc had Kleb, Rosicky, Nasri, our midfielders was used to be creative. He had Cesc, Kleb, Nasri, and Rosicky. And not only that, he was feeding Adebayor and Robin Van Persie. And that team didn't win anything. So what the fuck do you expect this team to do? I don't get it. I don't know what people were expecting. It's like they've never watched football before. even if you can say Odegaard's not been good enough, you don't want him to be captain anymore, all that kind of stuff, but you have to recognize that the way that the team is built requires 1 to 2 players to do the work of 7. That's ridiculous. That makes no sense at all. Brantrell says Nasri with the brilliant goal against Porto. Nasri was an asshole, but he in his like when he was at his pomp, he walks into this team like I kid you not, like Arsenal between 2008 and 2010 were much better than this team that we're watching now. They were like that was the closest that we got to like another really good side because we actually had world class players in the team that were just like there, you know. Nasri, yeah, Nasri was something else, man. But yeah, and those players were not like expensive either. That's what I'm saying. Like Adabar was not expensive, you know. Cesc, you know, came from somebody else's academy, which we don't do anymore. We don't poach players from other people's academies. We just kind of like do nothing from a youth perspective. Um, Nasri was cheap from some French team. You know, they weren't expensive, and I get that not expensive now would still be more expensive than it was then, but you don't have to always spend. Again, Shirky is just sitting around at Lyon, so I'm not trying to hear that you can't find good creative players, you know, for cheap. You know, um, cheating says we the fans are to blame. Fair enough. Blaze says we don't need to sell Saliba just to have 2 strikers. O'Malley says one thing about Arteta is he believes his hype. Do you think he actually believes his hype though? I don't think he does. I think Arteta believes. I think sometimes he believes his ideas, but I think he knows when they fail and then he doubles down on them because of his ego. I think having a big ego doesn't necessarily mean you believe everything that you're saying, and I think he does have imposter syndrome, and he doesn't really believe that we're good enough or he's good enough or whatever, but he's in a position where he has to pretend like he does. So yeah. Marseille, yeah, I think that's where Nasri is from. RD says Arshab and Fabregas, Wilshere, real Arsenal players miss that football. Yeah, maybe the defense was better than it was back then, but I still believe that was the closest that we were to winning another Premier League was with a team that had Cesc in it, Eduardo, Robert van Persie, like that era was much closer to winning something than this one. It was just more talent in the right positions. Sorry. And just when was your turning point on Arteta? Mine was when he started blaming Martinelli for missing half chances. I think I think people get it misconstrued that I'm like some toxic positive, but I wanted to always be kind of fair and always remember that he was a novice, so he was going to make mistakes. But I think in 2021, when we lost those 8 games, you know, that one run that everybody always talks about, I went Arteta out. Then, and you know, I got killed for it. But I just felt like anybody that has a poor run like that should probably go. You know, and we finished 8th, which, you know, we barely got better because he started using the kids, and that's when we got Saka and Emil and all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of let off of that. I wasn't feeling him at the end of the season where we didn't finish in the top 4. I thought that was ridiculous. And I think the biggest the one point where he never really came back from was at probably I had major concerns about him when we couldn't score a goal against Porto away, when we were struggling against Bayern. I think that's when I started to get a little the itch where I was like, yeah. But it wasn't fully until the end of last season where I was like, yeah, he's not the guy. And then we had the bad window, and I think I've had a sour taste ever since. There's just something about him that I can't ever get fully into him, and I think it's just there's probably only one time where I thought he was really good, and that was in the 2022-2023 season. I thought he had turned a corner, but not getting that over the line, I just felt like surely not. Arsene would have got that over the line. He would have got that over the line. Klopp would have got that over the line, even with the group that we had, because we were 8 points ahead, you know, at one point. Like we were really, really ahead. So yeah, I think I've had major questions about him. I never really fully bought in. I think that's the problem, is that I don't really have a turning point because I think I always was like, well, let's see how it goes. Because, like I told you guys before, I just couldn't believe that we ended up with him and the other team that's not even like a good side ended up with Ancelotti. I've always been a little bit like, but I wanted to give him a chance. And then I've always been like very clear on like, just because Arteta is not somebody that I like doesn't mean I'm going to lie. I'm not going to pretend like everything that he's done has been wrong. I'm not going to pretend like every player has been wrong. I'm not going to pretend like we've been bad this entire time. I'm not going to pretend like we're the worst team in the world. I feel like we need to be 5% better than what we are right now to reach what we want, where we want to be. And that's a hard context to apply when the majority of Arsenal Twitter and Arsenal YouTube is built upon being completely one-sided or the other. And so, yeah, it's tough because I think I've always felt a little bit like Arteta wasn't the guy, but I wanted to give him a chance. I never wanted to just blame him for everything. I feel like context is key. But when you've gone 5 seasons without winning anything, then the context doesn't hold up as much. And so 2 years beyond the first season that we challenged, it's really difficult for me to see why anybody would look at him and say he's 100% the guy. You could say that he needs attackers and stuff, but I feel like he'll have some similar problems with the attackers because one, he won't get attackers that solve our problems because he's always trying to make an attacker into something else or, not play to somebody's strengths. I worry about that. If those players get injured and we have to play with the Havertzes again, what is that going to look like? So, yeah, I have concerns about Mikel even with them, but we just have to hope that it improves. Blaze says, I'm very worried about next season because there will be a lot of pressure on Arteta and the players. Going in a 6th season without winning a trophy is scary. And can I be honest? I feel like that's another reason why I'd be really open to moving Mikel on is because we need to pop the balloon and release some of the pressure. And I feel like being in your 5th season and needing to win something is crumbling people. Sometimes with a new manager, the pressure is lessened, but we have a much better side than we did when we first started the project with Arteta. That team was horrendous, so that team was never going to reach the heights. But this team with less pressure because they have a new manager and you're kind of starting over with a new ethos and stuff like that, but with a couple new attackers could probably win something. I think Arteta creates another level of pressure because he's never really won or never really lived up to his what he's supposed to be doing, Edward says you're doing overtime, Jess, because I haven't been on in a while, so I want to make sure that it's like an actual therapy session. People are coming in and out, so I wanted to, and I have time today, so I didn't want to just like come on for an hour and then because you guys are coming in and out, so I know it's a little bit of a longer stream, but right now on multiple platforms, there's like almost 900 of you guys, so I just feel like it's probably fine, so yeah. Brand Trail says we actually are dropping off right now with no strikers means the midfield can't contribute any goals. Seems like regression. Burmy says, Jess, what's the maximum number of points we'll get this season? My God, I don't know. Because now the amount of points that we can get now, it feels like it's going to slow down a lot. So, West Ham we did started West Ham's winning streak, haven't we? We're at 54 now and we have like 10 games left, 11 games left or something like that. So mid-high 70s, mid-70s, mid-70s, mid-high 70s. I don't know. Mid-high 70s? I don't know. I don't know. 12 points is cold, man. Brand Trail says we need to win 5 of the remaining games to stay in top 4. Oh, Lord. Andrew says we're going to have to pray he resigns, but he won't because the crazy money he gets paid. Boy says, I think we get 69 points for real. I mean, I had counted on us beating West Ham. So not beating them has made me think, and not scoring in 2 games has made me think, okay, this is going to be probably way worse than I thought it was going to be. We drew, oh no, I'm sorry. Hold on. Where are we? And this was why dropping points to Everton and stuff like that wasn't okay, is because when you do that, then you don't have a big enough cushion. You know, we drop silly points to teams that we shouldn't have dropped points to, and now it's going to bite us in the ass. But oh my goodness, the next game is a Champions League game on Tuesday. I just cannot be asked. But could you bet that we go to Old Trafford and beat Man United? Probably won't. Chelsea on the 16th at home. I don't think we'll win that game. I think at most we'll draw. Beating Fulham. They're our bogey team. Will we beat them? I don't know. Everton are on a good streak. I don't know. Brentford at home. I don't know. Ipswich away. I don't know. Crystal Palace at home. We should beat them, but I don't know. Bournemouth at home. I don't know. Liverpool away. Pack it up. Arsenal against Newcastle at home. We lose that game, and then maybe we beat Southampton on the final day away from home. That's fucking crazy. I don't know if we'll win any of these games. Because that Nottingham Forest game is probably the best that we can do. Because basically that Nottingham Forest game is kind of how we looked all season, but we've been able to nick a goal here or there because Saka's been there, or we've scored on a set piece. Ever since Saka's been gone, our set pieces have gone down the drain as well, if you guys have noticed. So we need 5 wins. Okay, where are those 5 wins going to come from? Let's try to be positive. Let's say Brentford at home, Ipswich away, Crystal Palace at home, Southampton away. We need to get those wins sooner rather than later, because if it gets down to crunch time and we have to win, shit, I don't know. That's rough, y'all. I don't know. I really don't. Who's scoring these goals? Who do you guys think is going to score these goals? Who y'all think is going to score these goals? Yeah, Anderson, who's scoring the goals? I don't know. Because again, we're not doing well against the top 10 sides. So, we typically don't beat Man United at Old Trafford, even though we did last season. So you can throw that one up in the air. Chelsea is a top 10 team. Fulham is a top 10 team. Everton are on a nice little streak. Brentford are a top 10 team. Ipswich will be fighting relegation. Crystal Palace is probably a winner. Bournemouth is a top 10 team. Liverpool is a top 10 team. Newcastle is a top 10 team. And then we have Southampton. So the only ones that we can kind of look at is like Southampton, Crystal Palace, Ipswich away, Everton away. And then the rest of them are really up to the elements. So, woo-wee. Foxy says, you'll beat us at home. No way we beat you 4 times this season. Shut up. Branchville says, City is only 7 points behind us. We're not beating Bournemouth. I agree. Oh my gosh. This is, Boy says, when did our schedule ever get easy? These Top Gunners lied to me and said no. I think we had an easy part of the season, like a little stretch where we were meant to win all those games and we didn't do it. Let me find it. Because I remember looking at it and I'm like, we should clean up here. And we didn't. We fucked it. Here it is. Here is the stretch that ruined the season. Drawing to Fulham 1-1. Drawing to Everton 0-0. Brighton 1-1. Aston Villa 2-2. And the West Ham game. I mean, that's like 9 points right there. You know, that's a lot of points dropped. Fulham, Brighton, Everton, those 3 right there. If you don't get 1 point each, you get 3 points instead on all 3 of those games, then that's 9 points. So we're 6 points better off, and we're in the clear. You know, we are 100% getting top 4 at that point, because we'd be like 12 points ahead of the next team. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Everton at home couldn't beat them. Hello? The good thing that I've noticed, and this is what helped Aston Villa get it and stay in the top 4 last season, was everybody else is inconsistent beneath you. As long as those teams stay inconsistent, we'll be fine. But if they start getting more consistent than we are, Kimberly says Southampton 3 points in the bag. Listen, if that was at home, I'd say for sure. But Southampton last day of the season, if we're feeling all bad for ourselves and shit like that, because I think our last 2 games at the last day of the season were at home. We played Wolves at home and we played Everton at home. And we barely beat Everton at home last season on the last day of the season. So Southampton, even though they're a bottom feeder, maybe if they've already gone down, but we're so pathetic at times that we better beat them, man. Madaluco says, so sorry, I don't follow championship, but couldn't we have gotten a body striker from there in January? Felt like it would have been better having someone with hunger to prove something. I mean, we don't recruit. Our recruitment is what is in the Premier League that's already overpriced and performing well. Let's get that, or let's go to Chelsea and dig around and find something there. We don't have a recruitment strategy that allows us to look at the championship as a place to look for talent. We don't look, overseas really, or over in different places, different leagues. It's just very much so like one track mind, Victor says, nah, Jess, no pressure FC is going to pop up against Southampton and bang them 10-0. We move we might have like another City performance where we're so hyper-focused on City and we only care about that game because somehow that's become the only thing we care about because of Arteta mostly, that fuck the season. As long as we beat City, it's fine. That's the only time that we showed up and actually banged someone for real. Do you know how crazy that is to beat City and then not be able to beat anyone else? That's fucking crazy. So yeah, but in the Everton fixture, there was a handball on Jesus in the Everton fixture. We wasn't supposed to win that game last season. Yeah. And that's because we were all, because what if, Man City did slip up against West Ham on that day? God forbid, because we would have panicked because then we would have known we would have had a chance to win. Do you see how we operate? When we knew that the league was done the season prior, we beat up on Wolves and it was a sunny day. I was there. I was looking at them like, now you guys got a lot of nerve playing like this now. Last season, when there was even an inkling that if Man City had lost that game against West Ham, we played all clammed up. We conceded the first goal. We were looking all shit. It was crazy. So anytime things are on the line, we don't play good. Yeah. So it's crazy. Epoxy says those bottom 3 teams are so bad. I've seen us be so bad against Southampton before. Somehow they are a bogey team for us. Watch Aaron Ramsdale decide, you know what? This is the day I'm going to show up. But anyways, guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. The dogs are whining. It was 4 hours. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Yeah, we will resume. Now I'm feeling better, diluted, put me in a better mood and stuff, and basically told me to put up or shut up, get on streams and do your shit, So I appreciate you guys showing up. I needed this therapy session. I think you guys did as well. So yeah, make sure you guys like and subscribe on your way out, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.